All right, I see it
You're
recorded.
good.
All right, so I'll call the meeting to order at 6:34 p.m. Good. All right, so we have two new members, Mike Pantos and Krista Bennett on the subcommittee. So the first order of business is the election of the vice chair, since we actually have enough people to vote on a vice chair. So I will be open to nominations for vice chair, if anybody would like to nominate somebody.
I nominate Linda Woodland.
Would you like to accept that, Linda?
Yeah, sure. As long as that works for others.
All right. Yeah, you can also feel free to nominate anybody or any other nominations? Going once, twice? All right, so I'll do a roll call vote on this. Usually we do this on paper, but we don't have papers. We're all separated. So we'll do a roll call. It's recorded. We use that as the record. Yes.
So Krista made the motion, but do we have a second? Was my acceptance the second?
Is it?
I have it in
from
Rebecca's template.
I don't know, Adam, if you have to second a nomination, but if we want to be sure, we could just see if somebody would second it.
I'll second it.
Okay.
And we'll go with that. Just in case. Okay. All right, so I'll go around. Krista, I'll start with you.
Bennett, yes.
Mike? I can't hear you. You might have a microphone off. No, I still can't hear you.
Yeah, he can give you a thumbs up.
Yes.
Thumbs down, yeah.
Try to maybe unplug and plug in your microphone or something. And Linda?
Yes.
Okay, and I will vote for Linda as well. So.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to try to get Mike squared away first before we move on to items of discussion. Are you able to get sound yet? Okay.
Mike, sometimes things get a little quirky when you first join or something, so you might want to think about leaving the meeting and then rejoining and see if that helps. I'm not saying it definitely will, but it might.
There we go. The fun of technology.
Oh no, I hope he's able to get back. That's quite a while.
Blame
I
Bob.
don't know.
Or maybe it just feels like a while because it was like silent.
Well, we got the vote in, right? So, I mean.
Yep, you got that.
My first motion.
There it is. Yes, look at that.
First motion, and we lost the other member of the committee. Nice. That's a good omen for the future.
That's how the subcommittee rolls. Like people come in and go, all right, Mike, how's it looking now? You're on mute.
So that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is a good sign.
Right, yeah. Because before it showed him unmuted and we couldn't know.
And the question is, can he hear us? Mike, can you?
If I can make a recommendation, if this is a problem here, maybe Mike just has to call into the meeting. He'll lose the ability for the camera, et cetera. But can you hear us, Mike? I think Adam would just call in. So what'll happen is that we'll see his number up on the screen. There'll be two, or there'll be two icons, if you will. But he'll just have to call in.
All right. Let me,
All right. You sent him that note, Krista? We can't hear you now.
No, too late. He left.
Right.
I didn't notice he was gone.
I'll send him an email.
You want me to read you the number? Do you have it? Here we go.
And it's president.
Command D is the keyboard stroke. If you're clicking and it won't unmute you, Mike, you can try that.
I see first video. Oh, there we go. All right, Mike, I don't know if you can hear us, but I did put in the chat a phone number you can call into, and then you can do audio that way. Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right.
Success.
It worked.
Yeah.
It worked last week, so I'm not sure what changed. But
Yeah, that's odd. I mean, I know I have to choose at work, and sometimes my microphone shuts off, and I got to just restart my computer, but that's a pain. So this,
Yeah, if you have more than one microphones too, they can switch off of each other, and I don't know. There's so many different possibilities.
yeah. All right. So, first order of business tonight is approval of the minutes of the meeting of November 16th, 2020. Someone would like to make that motion?
So move.
I'll second that since I was there. Is there any discussion or questions about the minutes of that meeting? Any issues that anybody saw? Nope. Seeing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Linda?
Woodland, yes.
Krista?
Abstain.
Okay. Mike? Okay. Now you got to work the mute on the phone too. Okay. And Young votes yes. Yep, and he's got to dial back in. All right. Mike, you're gonna try to dial back in. I'll keep going and just discuss some of the first things. So what I wanted to do at the start of this meeting, since we have two new members, is just kind of do an overview of the subcommittee, kind of what we've done before, what we're doing now, where I see us going in the future, and then look to you guys also for guidance on where we should be going. So what I really kind of see are where I see our functions and duties as I put it out. I should actually come up with a document, and maybe do that at the next meeting to see if we can just lay out exactly what we're doing, what our role is, what falls under this subcommittee. The way I see it, and I'm open to suggestions on this, because no one's really defined what facilities and security is. What we've done in the past is, I mean, obviously anything's having to do with the buildings, the grounds, the maintenance and operation of those. Also anything having to do with security, kind of safety. And, we've expanded a little bit just this into some of the logistics behind that, security, safety, and, facility stuff. Yeah, so anything that basically it doesn't fall under other subcommittees that touches anything on from a building to safety is where I see us kind of laying. So I was thinking of just drafting up a document. Actually, Fall River Public Schools had a good little layout of each of their subcommittees in a format of every subcommittee should have a list of the title, listing of the general areas of responsibility, the type of task they may undertake, and a few other little bullets. It's just a good template to use. So I'm going to draft that up for our next meeting. So if anybody has any other input on areas that we should cover, I'm open to it.
My microphone works now.
Yeah, nice.
My speakers were being recognized as an input device, so that wouldn't work.
Yeah, that'll do it. I'm glad you got it fixed.
Me too.
All right. So is there any input on what else this subcommittee should be tasked with? And if not, I'll kind of move on to a review of what we've done. All right. I don't see any. So what we did basically before this year started, or this year as of March and on, a lot of our work was focused on facilities, maintenance, security, a lot of the ALICE training and implementation of that, and things like that. Since COVID started, we've been involved with how the buildings are set up, a lot of the PPE side of it, and then the HVAC, everything that goes into that. Linda and I have toured the schools, talking about IT, that infrastructure. And again, a lot of that is stuff that falls under us anyway. It's just been very highlighted this year. Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
And one thing, Adam, too, that we've been about, especially this year, and it's on the agenda tonight, is that we've also begun to look at policies that haven't been looked at in a gazillion years, quite frankly, and to tackle them kind of one by one as we go through the year. The ones that are on the agenda that we're going to work on down the road, you can see it's the better part of 25 years or something like that they've been looked at. So that's a task in and of itself. So
yeah. So that's kind of the things that we're working on now. We also did the mask policy. That was something that fell under our subcommittee. Actually one of the things I think Dan wanted to talk about tonight, the MEMA and FEMA grant. It's something that came up due to COVID with all the PPE purchases. Actually, Dan, I don't know if you want to give an update on that.
Sure, be happy to. So for the new members, FEMA through MEMA, say that 10 times fast, made available to districts across the Commonwealth and in the nation this past summer, opportunities to be reimbursed for expenditures relative to COVID. We jumped at the opportunity back in the summertime, and we worked on an application. Kind of speed up the story. We submitted an application to MEMA. That's the first step. For approximately $129,188 is the value of the application. And there are several projects that you could submit for. So that was our first project. We don't have it here tonight, but Adam, I can certainly provide the group at the next meeting just a backup to what that is, but it's primarily all PPE, and these were expenditures that we incurred primarily at the end of last year, but some through the early part of this fiscal year, and the expenditures were charged to the general fund from last year to this year's general fund to circuit breaker and what have you. Funds that were appropriate for these expenditures. We submitted it. It's been a while. I had a conversation, a virtual meeting last Thursday with my rep. There are reps assigned to every district or every area. They must have like 30 or 40 municipalities for each rep. I can only imagine. There were a couple of more deliverables that he's looking for. We did submit one last Friday. They wanted more detail on the PPE expenditures. They wanted to know when we used it and where we used it and so on and so forth. And this wasn't in the original application request. And then secondly, he wants they want a narrative, and I'm working on a narrative. They want several paragraphs. I did say to him, I'm not a poet laureate, or I don't write for the New York Times, but I'm happy to provide that. And this was something that, again, that wasn't in the original application, so we'll get that done by Friday. I'll submit it to MEMA, and then they'll move it on to FEMA. We're working with a good guy. I think he's working with us, and he wants to enable us to be reimbursed for something. At the end of the day, it's 75 cents on the dollar. So assuming that all of our identified expenditures are eligible and per the guidelines, I certainly think that they're eligible, but I'm not the judge of the jury, so to speak. We're estimating approximately almost $97,000, $96,891, 96,891, Linda, 75% on the 129. It's still a process. This has been the better part of 4+ months thereabouts. He did tell me that once we submit there's one more deliverable, that we could hear something probably within the month. So that would be great. And receiving almost $100,000. Again, I'm the glass is half full for me in this situation. Bob's kind of laughing because I'm kind of the glass is half empty kind of guy. Just the nature of my business, I guess. But almost $100,000 is certainly almost $100,000 more. This is the first project. We can certainly look at more. And again, this is something that we talk about in business and finance, because in our budget, we created 2 lines this year. They weren't part of the budget process. Linda and Adam, and for the newer members, it wasn't. We have one line for just the expenditures. And that's where we were dumping a lot of the expenditures that Bob's grant, the school reopening grant, has been reimbursing the district for. And then we have a second line, for payroll costs, and those costs last I looked at, just under 30,000, and those costs were associated with any staff who had put in for the COVID leave. So again, speed up the story. Where we're looking to submit this by the end of the week to MEMA. He'll be the check and balance, so to speak, dot the I's, cross the T's. He'll submit it to FEMA. And again, these are federal dollars, so there are a few hoops that we need to jump through. Secondly, just real quick, Bob has written a couple of what I call the COVID grants, but the big one was the 1.5 million. And we've talked about this at school committee and certainly at finance as well. And again, a lot of the charges that we put forward in the general fund, we have backed out. We've journaled out in my world into Bob's grant. That grant, and this is kind of goofy. It's just the way that these dollars are set up, but that grant expires. All these COVID-related costs expire on December 30. Why not December 31? I don't know. that came from Congress, but December 30. And Bob and I, we put through something yesterday, almost 47,000. And so that gets the balance in that grant. We're pretty much spending it out. We're pretty much spending it out. So as I think I've said this to this committee and certainly to finance, is that it's my intent, depending upon how this goes, that as we go through the year, that we submit another project to FEMA through MEMA for reimbursement. I mean, just keep on pushing the envelope and hope for the best. Short question, long answer. I'd be happy to answer, take any questions. Linda?
Just a quick question about the two other deliverables. Are these things that were newly asked, like the narrative and so on, or was that part of the initial application that was there, or is it new now?
They were new.
Great.
They were new.
Yeah.
So again, and I can show the other members at our next meeting. I don't think I have it here. The backup to the 129,000. You folks have seen it, Linda and Adam. You've seen it, and they wanted us to identify like when we used them. And so the guidance that we got was if we bought something on July 15th, they said put down July 22nd as when you used it. That's what he told us to do. That's what we did. So we submitted that last Friday. He's got that now. And I think it's passed muster, so to speak. He hasn't said any issues with it. So then the paragraphs, the narrative that was not part of the original application, so they're asking us for more information. They've given us some guidelines, and it's like a test. Just make sure you answer the test question correctly and go forward. So it's a long answer, short question. It's all new. It is all new.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Please.
How is it working to get through these new hoops? It just in terms of time and where you need to be directing energies, is this working?
So I mean, we got to do it. You got to do what you got to do. We're looking at almost $100,000 again on the premise that we get reimbursed for the full application. No stone goes unturned, so to speak. I might pass it off to Bob actually later on when I write my paragraphs, just to say, hey, can you look at this? Can you read this paragraph? It's always good to have a second set of eyes to say, I don't think he answered the question. seriously, because sometimes if you spend a lot of time on something, you kind of immerse yourself, and so I think it's good to have a different set of eyes, maybe someone removed from the work. I think that might be a task for the new members of the committee to look at. Kidding. But seriously, a second set of eyes just to say, hey, did I answer the question? What do you think? Seriously, and then I'll hit click, and we'll go from there.
Something. Anybody else have questions on either that grant or anything else on just the background of what we've been doing so far? Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn. I'm a special ed teacher at the preschool, and I'm also the secretary for the Educators Association. So I don't know how vocal kind of union members typically are. I feel like this year I have been just in order to share information about how things are going inside the actual buildings. So when things have been relevant to share, I've shared them in a document. I try to get that to the group before the meeting starts. And that way we can just get some questions on the table and kind of go through that process. But I just wanted to give you a little overview of my role.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's good. Yeah, and I think, Bob, I don't know if you got a chance to update the document that Carolyn had sent out on the HVAC stuff, but if you did, we'll go over that during the HVAC update.
Yeah, he sent that to the group.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm still going through emails. So yeah, that's just an example of some of the stuff she's brought to the table. Yeah, and it is helpful because there's definitely times where we've just had a specific question and go, Carolyn, what is this? How is this working? So it's definitely been helpful. All right. As for future work of the subcommittee and where we're going, obviously we're dealing with all the COVID stuff now. As we move forward into a reopening phase, I'm sure we'll have a lot of work to do on that. Just reports, public hearing on issues, successes, things like that. And also generating our feedback and input for the full committee. Other things that we do and will be doing are we have a whole lot of policies we got to update. There's discussion of new buildings. Holden needs a new something school. However they figure out they're going to do it. I've heard a few proposals, either new elementary school or put fifth grade and make some sort of middle elementary school, something. And then also, I know Linda brought up that during her Simco with ECC, there was discussion about just building issues there. And it was in my ideal world, we could combine that and only have to do one building. But there is the idea that one's a Holden building and one would be a building with a district program in it. So there is that balance. It is something I'd like to see us work towards so that all the towns and the district can save money on that through economy of scale. So I don't know, but that's definitely something we need to do soon. Dan.
So, Adam, just for the newer members, we had a brief discussion at one point last year, I can't remember when exactly, relative to submitting an SOI with the MSBA. The SOI, by definition, is an acronym for Statement of Interest to the Mass School Building Authority. Daryl and I had a conversation probably about this time a year ago with a rep from the MSBA. And typically what happens is, for the newer members, is that after the holidays, they'll release applications to districts to submit statements of interest on potential building projects. And again, we spoke about this, I think, early on, almost a year ago thereabouts, but it didn't go very far, and we never submitted the SOI because they were due, if I remember correctly, in early April. So that was something that we looked at then. And again, you talk about a building project. If we go down that road, my guess is that they'll probably open up the application portal again after the holidays, just using history as my barometer. And you would put through the application for, a building project, like a new building. And there are various steps that you need to go through for that. But to do something now, you'd be looking at a building project that, potentially breaking ground like 2 years down the road. So that's something else that we talked about very briefly. Certainly, you should talk about building projects in the future. The time for the SOI is now, actually, or at least to begin to talk about it. And the other thing that we've talked about in the past, which is clearly a charge for this committee, and I think has changed a lot with COVID, is the capital plan. My colleague, my predecessor, Joe Scanlon, had created a document. I have updated it, but in light of COVID and the many challenges relative to the building, especially around HVAC, I think that they would probably move up the scale in terms of priorities for projects. So that's something that we should probably put on the agenda fairly soon, because it's a budget issue. This would not be in our budget, but it would be in the respective towns' budgets, and would need to go before their finance committees and perhaps their capital committees, and if these get approved, they get on the town meeting warrants, and typically those warrants are done like in early March or thereabouts for a May town meeting. So just something else to add here. It's a busy group.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to clarify that a little bit, that capital plan, within the regional agreement, there's a set dollar amount. Is it still 30,000?
35.
35. So anything above that is the town's responsibility for any of the town buildings, which is everything except the ECC, central office, and high school. So we developed the plan on what we have seen within the buildings need to be worked on, and we do that out as I believe it was a 10-year plan that we were looking at, and so that they can plan out. Was it 10?
Yes, yep, that's correct. It was a 10-year capital plan. I mean, you project it out, but let's face it, the needs are changing sometimes every day. And Adam, we should probably point out too, for the larger group, and I believe we talked about this at school committee briefly. Paxton, for example, has helped us with a project over there. They used part of their CARES Act money, just a tad under 35,000. I think it was 34,000 and change, and they're tackling an HVAC issue over there. If my memory serves me correct, is that right, Bob? If my memory. So, and we appreciate that, again, that they're addressing that issue there.
Good. Thank you.
See, the problem, Adam, is that when you give me the microphone, you can't shut me up.
Yeah, I got.
I thought this is going to be a quick meeting.
Maybe I can get that mute button back. I'll talk to Rebecca. We'll see.
He did do that to me one time. He actually muted me.
Not on purpose, maybe. Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, I guess, does anybody have any questions on, where we're going beyond COVID, really? This is kind of a quick general overview of what we have on the near term regular business stuff.
Oh, something that we talk about, some that I think is a little bit more complicated now for different reasons than usual is about that security and Alice and safety plans and that kind of angle, since Alice is not exactly up to date on COVID, let's just say. So, I mean, have they even made any? I'll save that. But but that is something that we should address, I think, as part of security in the near future.
Linda, I might suggest that let's get the kids back into school, and then I think that would be appropriate then to circle back to that and start to get an update on where are we going with that. I think everybody's got their eyes clearly on the prize of January 19th and making sure we get all the kids back in, and let's get that cranked up. And then I think we could circle back to this. That might be the best way to gain some traction with it, rather than people viewing it as, oh my goodness, you're asking us about this now. I'm just being honest. That's all.
No, I mean, it's a good point. It is something we need to start planning soon. There's not necessarily implementation beyond what we've done, because just for everyone's update, we've done all the teacher training. As far as I remember, I don't know if there was anything left over at the end of last year, but we were just about ready to start basically the student aspect of training this year, from what I remember. It's been so long. Is that what you remember, Linda? Or anybody else?
That's about what I remember.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to point out, though, that if you look at the Alice, their official website, don't believe that they've made any updates to their system since the outbreak of COVID in March, which I think might set off a larger discussion that I agree, keep the eyes on the prize, but I think that there might be some ideas to examine with using the Alice system that COVID fundamentally changes. But.
All right. So that's all I've got under subcommittee overview. Does anyone have any questions in general about subcommittee or anything else? I know, Mike, you're brand new to the whole committee, so you're probably drinking from the fire hose a little bit, but that's how it goes. All right. So I think I'll move on to the next topic, which is probably the big one for tonight. Just in general, the whole topic is COVID-19. We've got bullets of what I saw as topics under that. So first, from administration, looking for an update on the current status. I guess I'll group the first two things together. So current status, and then any lessons, events, or anything like that with those that are in person, any lessons learned there. I don't know who wants to take this.
So I can jump in and get us going here. And certainly I think questions would help to focus the conversation here a little bit better. What we've done is, and we'll get to that in just a little bit here, we've worked closely with the boards of health. We've worked closely with, from all 5 towns, we've worked closely with all of our nurses. And internally, we've had discussions too about what makes sense for when we should look at closing a classroom or a school or the district. And so we've come up with a matrix, and we can kind of go through that. It's a draft. I believe, Adam, you've seen that last night for the first time. You saw that last night, I think,
yep.
for the first time.
Management.
Yep. So. And we'll take a minute or two to you know, in a little bit, I should say, and we can go through that. In terms of COVID overall, we have seen a slow increase. We thought there would be, at first, we were seeing a linear increase, which was week to week, we were seeing more cases. And when we actually looked at it as a graph, a chart, there was a line you could draw through it and say, like, wow, we increased, you know, 3 cases pretty much every single week, something along those lines. And then after the Thanksgiving break, there was actually a big dip, and maybe it was just that people had been away and they hadn't been reporting and that type of thing. And now it's back up there again. So that's something internally we've learned, and we're kind of reflecting on. We review those numbers as needed. At first, we were thinking we'd just look at these numbers once a week, but now we look at them pretty much after we deal with each case. And here's what I mean by dealing with the cases. Let's say that we get a call from a principal that he or she heard that so-and-so has tested positive, whether it's a student or an adult. We then convene our internal team, and that includes myself and at least one other administrator. A lot of times that's Brendan Keenan. Most of the time it's Brendan Keenan. And then we also look at bringing in the principal that's involved in the school, the nurse from the school, and whatever board of health member or members we feel is a great first conversation. So if a person lives in Holden and they worked in Holden, obviously that would be Holden. If a person, let's say, lived in Sterling and worked in Holden at one of the schools, we might bring 2 boards of health in like that. And then we begin to ask questions about, all right, who do we believe could be a potential close contact? And we generate a list from that. And that includes students, it includes adults, it might include custodians, it might include paraprofessionals that are in there. It could include, maybe there was a group in there, outside vendor working on their air handler in their room, for instance. It might include them as well. So we try to talk it all through and figure those things out. And then we start to call the people that either were infected or have tested positive. And from them, we interview and get information, which lets us then decide as a group who are the close contacts. And then at that point, the Board of Health makes the call in terms of so-and-so needs to be out, and their return date to work, if they don't test positive, would be this. And we establish all that, and we communicate that back out then to all the individuals. So that's what we've been doing and following. We've revised that process several times, and we try to always have a follow-up meeting after the fact to try to, okay, what did we learn? What didn't work well? What worked really well? And so those are some of the things we've learned in terms of COVID here. The Board of Health members from the towns have anecdotally told us that you've got a really solid system here. We have a spreadsheet we use, which has all the contact information listed. They don't have to go hunting that. They don't have to call us back for additional phone numbers, those types of things. And that sort of evolved over maybe the first 4 or 5 cases that we had in the school. So at least internally, we feel we can react a little bit quicker. It's a good 60 minutes to maybe 90 minutes, depending on the case, is the total time that you kind of throw at that and where you get a resolution. And sometimes you have to follow up because it gets a little bit crazy with, well, so-and-so said they also did this, and oh, now I remember I also was here, and those types of things. So that's what we've learned in terms of COVID. I feel in terms of contact tracing and those, we've got a pretty solid system down. We've really reiterated to the principals that we have to know where everybody is. We're slowly getting a bit better about having a very consistent sign in, sign out policy, all those types of things. And I feel we're in a better place now than maybe if we had opened a few weeks ago in terms of having a better system in place about tracing the movements of students inside the schools, especially in those upper grades, middle and high school, where kids kind of, I got to go to the bathroom kind of thing, you know, and they're let out a little bit more often than maybe elementaries are. So questions or anything? I don't know if I covered enough for you guys or what you might be thinking.
Go ahead, Linda.
I can hold off. I feel like I'm always jumping in. But I just wanted to check with the contact tracing. So then once there's somebody who tests positive, all of the energy is about tracing forwards to potential like future infections, or is there any work towards where did this person get infected from?
That's not what we're charged with as a school
Yeah.
district. So I can't speak for the Board of Health members, and I'm not privy to exactly what they say when they call an individual. So in terms of maybe time and forward and backwards, let's say that today, we're all in the same class together. Let's say we're all sitting in the same room here together, and I say today, I tested positive for COVID. Well, it's not only Bob, who were you with today? We go back 48 hours, so 2 days prior. And then we try to say, all right, so who'd you have lunch with yesterday? And did you sit with the same group? Who'd you go with 2 days ago? And that's where sometimes it gets a little tough for people to remember. Some principals have worked with paraprofessionals and teachers to say, look, if you're working very closely with a student, let's say I was tutoring Dan and he's my student and I have to be right next to him. And maybe today I was with him 10 minutes, but yesterday I was with him 30 minutes. So those are the types of things we're trying to get people to be consistent about notating, is not only was I working close with Dan, closer than 3 feet, but the length of time as well. And to really pay attention for any periods of time where you're in there for more than 15 minutes. That's really the thing we've learned from the Board of Health, is more than 15 minutes, closer than 3 feet. And Linda, here's the other thing we learned. I know there's a lot of questions about masks and face shields and plexiglass. For what we've learned from the Board of Health, none of that matters. It's the distance and the time. So, I mean, that was like eye-opening.
Right. I mean, and then there's also the cumulative. It's not just 15 minutes here, but it's
yeah.
But that all is uncovering where the infection could go in the future. Looking back 2 days, because you're infectious 2 days before potentially. So it's not tracing back where the initial infection comes from. That's not on the school's plate.
It's not, but in a strange way, I guess I'm actually happy you're asking this. The Department of Education is telling us, you got to keep your schools open unless there's an internal transmission. Then you can maybe think about closing a classroom or a school, but you got to contact us. You got to contact the Board of Health. So in some ways, we need to sort of also now be paying attention to, is this a potential internal, inside the classroom, inside the school, internal transmission? In other words, I got it, and now Dan's got it 2 days later. So, potentially that could be, that could have been an inside the school transmission. So that's what they're having us look at now, which is different than the way it was maybe 6 weeks ago. So
I know, Carolyn, you have a question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a little input on that. Sometimes when a positive case becomes known, the information that we're getting from the source kind of becomes apparent. Like, we met up with family on Halloween. Now a cousin's positive and we're positive. So the kind of investigative part at the very beginning, sometimes it's just kind of obvious, or it kind of just seems that we're getting good information that way. I wanted to mention to you, Bob, one thing about when everybody kind of gets contacted. So there's a case at whatever school, and the close contacts have been contacted directly, and everybody else in the school gets contacted indirectly through, a school messenger or something like that. The only hiccup with that is the related service providers that are in several buildings. Because of the way that the system is set up, they can only be attached to like one building, but they work in several. So I feel like that's a problem that needs to be remedied so that they are getting the information that they need to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Carolyn. We're aware of that, and yeah, that's something we got to take care of. I think communication and contact in general is, yeah, if I was giving it a grade, maybe it's a C right now. It's certainly not an A, and we got to do a better job with it. So we're getting feedback. I think the big thing is we're trying to react as fast as we can to what we get for feedback. And I certainly don't want us to have a C grade in 2 weeks from now. I want us to have a B+ grade, you know, that type of thing. And eventually I want us to be like, yeah, that works really well. So some people, some principals communicate a little bit more information. Some communicate a little less. We're still trying to work that, even though we have a standard form letter that we give to each person. So we're getting there. We're getting there. We're circling the wagons. We're practicing. We're going to be better. Next game, yep, we're going to be better. Yeah, absolutely. So that's where we're at, guys. I mean, it is what it is. We're committed to doing a better job than where we are right now. That's for sure. And communication is one of those areas where we need to crank it up a little better.
Thanks. Mike, I saw you had a question.
Question for Carolyn. So I think you used the word service providers. Are you referring to traveling professionals such as aides and people that work in different buildings throughout the district? Who are you
Yeah, so
referring to?
typically those are speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and they have more than one school that they're going to.
All right, thank you.
Psychologists are also in that realm. Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right. I feel like I had a question, but I don't remember it. If I come up with it, I'll circle back.
Adam, there's some nights where we feel exactly that same way.
Yeah, don't blame me at all, because you guys like doing this all day, and then what, like half the nights of the week with school committee groups. So, all right. So I guess that's it for current status, unless anybody has any other questions about what's going on currently. So I guess, or at least what's going on in person currently. Right now we're in a remote phase with special ed students in the building for different periods of time. I think it's different for different students. But I kind of wanted to bring up a couple of things. One, I guess, how is the remote side of that doing through IT, bandwidth within the buildings, between the buildings, and then just outside of the educational aspect of it, because that definitely falls under ed sub. But are we able to meet those needs with the infrastructure and equipment that we have now?
Yeah, and thanks for sharing this with me earlier, Adam. That helped me a lot. I met with Barry Scalar, and I got some notes here, so I'll bring those up and I'll kind of go through them. I asked him all about these things. So in terms of internet and connectivity, so every school has a high-speed fiber connection right now, except for Sterling. And the good news is that's scheduled to be in and going live on December 22nd. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
that's a real good step forward. That happened pretty quickly once the gears started moving on that. Now, the power of having fiber in is if we detect a consistent problem, like, boy, we're hitting the wall here with our bandwidth in this school repeatedly, it's a call to our service provider and they just crank up the bandwidth, and then obviously they charge us more, but that's as simple as it is. It's not like they're coming in and installing another line or another device or hooking something else up. It's just a call to the service provider and it can get remedied, right on the spot. So that's the power of having fiber into all our schools, which we will after the 22nd.
Did you get that date, Carolyn, the 22nd?
22nd of December.
Okay.
Yep.
She just popped up a question in the chat.
Sure.
Mm.
In terms of Chromebooks, devices that the kids and the adults are using, we have 1,200 that are now in. They're currently being enrolled, and we expect that over the break, we'll have them ready to go, and we'll be contacting families and distributing those in January. And our plan is to work with grades 6 and 7 and then 8 to get them these new Chromebooks. That'll mean we'll be officially one-to-one from grades 6 through 12. Once that's done, we'll collect back the Chromebooks from the students that have borrowed them. We'll be able to refurbish them and clean them, and then those will go back into the Chromebook carts that are present in all the schools. So some of the principals and some of you have been going to the meetings in the schools, and they're like, hey, we don't have any Chromebooks in our school because they've all been lent out. This is how we're going to refurbish those. And I guess the good news is that in some cases, in some of the schools that are just a middle school, like Mountain View, for instance, if the students are all one-to-one, they don't need Chromebook cards. So that means we'll be able to bring some other ones into the schools that actually need to have Chromebook cards in play. For kids that borrow a Chromebook in the elementary grades, they won't be expected to bring those in. Instead, that's why we want to have the Chromebook carts in the school. The teachers will be able to use the Chromebook carts to have the kids use those when they come into school. Because the younger kids, it's just tougher to, it falls out of the backpack, or, oh, I forgot this. So that's the way we're trying to make sure that we're not being held up by a younger kid that might forget, to bring something in, or it fell or broke or something, is we'll just have the device at each end. They'll keep their ones at home, and these will be present at school. We have a second batch of 1,200 that actually, ironically, were ordered earlier. They were ordered in June, and they're still pending delivery. The good news is we got notice that we're getting a few of these in soon, over the next few days or something like that, or maybe even a week out. But it's only like 170 or something. It's just a very few, but it's the beginning of that order getting filled. So we're kind of getting maybe a little bit more positive about getting those in soon. Those machines will go out. It'll finish off grade 8 if we need to finish off grade 8 with one-to-one, and then it'll be into all the schools. There, just more devices into everybody's hands. We've issued a technology survey, pushed it out to staff, and I'm working with principals to make sure it gets pushed out a second time, because I'm not sure everybody has seen it. But the technology survey asks staff members, hey, what do you think you need? Do you need a second monitor? Do you need a microphone? And they get a couple of choices. They're not just saying yes or no. They're saying, absolutely, I need that. Or I'm not quite sure, maybe I need that. And that tells us a different answer, which is, hey, we should probably contact these guys and talk to them a little bit. For people that absolutely say they need something, we're in the process of starting to fill those and get them what they've asked for. And for people that are maybe a little unsure, we're starting to develop a plan of attack to get in touch with them, to have communications and sort of interview them and figure it out a little bit better. So I feel that's been a good step forward for us in terms of a survey that maybe isn't so cut and dry kind of thing. And we listed a whole bunch of different things that they could say, yeah, I think I need that, including like a portable podium desk that they could put the laptop on the top and walk around the classroom while they're interacting with kids and still be able to see anybody that might be remote, for instance. And at the bottom was an open-ended statement where they could ask for pretty much anything else that they would like. In terms of some of the existing desktop computers we have, and in some of the buildings, people have been saying the internet is bad. My meeting keeps getting interrupted. Well, we've looked into that in all the buildings where there's been complaints. It's not the internet. Other than Sterling, we definitely found some issues there. It's not the internet. It's actually the processor in these older desktop computers can't handle. Not only are all those kids' pictures in there and it's having to process all that, but also as an adult, I'm pushing things out and I've got my document camera and I'm trying to show a video, and it's kind of choking and dying at times and dropping the meeting so it can kind of catch its breath for a minute. So we've ordered upgrades for the processors, and we're going to be working to come in, take the computer down for a little bit, put in the new processor, and then move on from there. So that's what we're doing with those. Some of these, I mean, it's an indication of what we're really trying to get these machines to do. If you think about last year at this time, nobody was holding these intense meetings like this constantly for hours on end and trying to get the machines to be, pretty robust players in the whole internet field. Instead, we were like, yeah, watch this one video I'll show on the smart board, or what? Here's a I want to show you this, what I made. Here's a map or something. It wasn't as intense as what we're asking things to do now. So we are catching up, but it's taken us a little time to figure some of these things out. Let's see. We're also updating. We have software that sits in the background, and basically it prevents you from, as a kid or an adult, from maybe hitting certain sites. And for kids, it's cranked up much higher than for adults. So if someone misspells a word and puts something in, instead of socks, they type in sex or something, it's going to stop, the shock and awe, that sort of thing, from coming through. But the good thing is we're updating that because teachers have asked us, hey, I've got all these kids now, and if they're going to be in school and you're putting all these Chromebooks in their hands too, especially in 6 through 8, I want to see what the kids are doing, or I want to be able to monitor what's going on. So by upgrading securely, it's going to allow us then to provide that to teachers, to let them do remote device management so they can sort of manage what's happening in their classroom setting. And lastly, what I'd like to say is, and I'm really excited about this, I might be a little tired tonight, but I'm really excited about this. We held interviews for elementary and middle school technology integration specialists today. And we've got some great candidates, really great candidates. So we're really excited about that. We're looking to bring them on board. These will be people that will be able to not only train teachers, but also be that just-in-time support. I'm trying to do this and I don't know how, or the day of support. What's going on? I can't push this out. I can't do that. So granted, it's not one person in every building, but we only have one for the whole district now, and this will bring us up to 3. So there'll be one for the high school, one for the middle grades, and one for the elementary grades. And we're pretty excited about that. That's the beginning of that support that I think staff really is looking for here. We've thrown them in the deep end, and these guys are now coming into the deep end with them and teaching them a few basic paddle, here's how you swim and get out of here and all that, so that people don't have to feel they're drowning. So there's an update, kind of quick, but
Excellent. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Hit the wrong button.
Here we go.
I was just curious if you could bring me up to speed. Does each building have some sort of IT representative, or how many people in the IT department for the district, all levels, are there?
the high school has a dedicated person. The others, they have one or maybe two that they'll see. They have a primary one that they'll see, but it's not one per building. We don't have that level of support. So
one per town, even?
Yeah, there's more than one per town. So there might be 7, maybe of them, maybe 8. It's in that category, but it's not 13, which would be one per school. So it's definitely not there. Yeah.
And if I could just comment on kind of what you said about the computers, asking them to do so much more than what they were used to. I can remember sitting in NAQUAG and doing some sort of online learning on this Windows XP machine, and now we're doing video calls with 30 kids in a classroom. Yeah. You're basically taking on these existing schools and asking them to do the processing level of a commercial office building, really.
Mike, that's a great analogy. It's and not only is it taxing on the machines, we've taken adults that have been trained to teach kids a certain way, and we've now said, nah, forget about that. figure this out. Here you go, guys. Oh, we're starting on this date, by the way. So there you go. And it's very taxing on the adults as well. It just is. And on top of that, is that kid sneezing in my classroom? Did they wash their hands the right way? So it's a stressful, crazy time for everybody. It just is. It's been interesting.
Carolyn, I see you have a hand raised.
Yeah, some of these are in the document that I shared, but since the topic is now, I'm going for it. So you had mentioned that with computers, they need an updated processor and it's not an issue of internet. So how does that work at buildings like at ECC where we're basically only using Chromebooks? We don't really have any desktops anymore so that they can be portable and staff can bring them home. But the problem is still in one classroom, only one Chromebook can be used at a time, because if somebody else tries to get on, or if one teacher tries to use a Chromebook to present and then another Chromebook to view her students, which is so crucial at the early level, like you just can't do it.
Yep. Carolyn, we're going to have to circle back to ECC. You guys are unique. And what I mentioned there is not true for ECC. It's not about processor, because we can't do that with the Chromebooks. And it could be, Carolyn, that we have to look at getting you guys a better device in your hand than the Chromebooks that you have. So we'll circle back. We absolutely will. We'll get in there and at least talk to some people and then do some measuring. And that'll happen before the break. So I can't promise you it'll be this week, but we'll jump in there and see what's cooking, and so we can start thinking while we're on break as to what we're going to do over there. Yeah, you guys are kind of unique. I know when I've been over there with the HVAC, I'm telling you guys the same thing. Like, yeah, these air handlers are. Oh, but it's true.
Thank you.
Yep.
Linda, I know you were trying to wait.
She was.
I was trying to be nice.
You did really well.
I know, it's so hard. The lessons in patience are not just for others, they are so for me too. So my questions are just about going back to the internet. So things like the fiber and Sterling or any other upgrades like that. Do you know if there are any state or federal bills that are looking at gaining access to utilities? Like, oh, actually, I take that back. I don't recall if it is technically a utility, but to get better internet access, is that something that you know of that we could, as committee members, advocate for?
So
Go ahead, Dan.
I think, Linda, you're referring to the E-rate program, and perhaps bumping up the distribution to like 95%. That's what comes to mind when you mentioned that federal program and the internet.
So that's one of the things that was sort of in the back of my mind, and I'll take credit for thinking of that, sure. But
Hey, why not? Go for it.
No, that was actually not, that wasn't in my radar. No, I was thinking of when you're saying about if we're running into bandwidth problems, that we could just bump up the speed and the access that way, but then we would end up having to be charged for it. Yes. So for that kind of question of is there any potential relief in the works through the state or feds?
So Linda, I'll tell you this, there was I'm forgetting the name of the grant. So one of the grants that I wrote that we got earlier in the year was for technology infrastructure and all that, and Chromebooks and those types of things. So it could have fit in under there. I don't necessarily worry about that, because if we get relief, whatever it is, I work very closely with Dan, I work closely with Barry, our tech director. What we can do is so this only can be used, let's say, for Chromebooks. All right, then let's offload this charge there, which creates some room there, so that'll cover the cost of this. Maybe it's only for PPE. All right, so now I'm going to sit with Dan and say, Dan, I want to transfer this money here that we've already expended on PPE. That'll liberate some room for the internet. So that's how we're going to play this one. So it's just relief in general. If we can get relief internally, we can look at how we can then liberate some costs. And the other thing we always look at is there some way we could use one of our revolving accounts to maybe help us in the short term, not to cover it in the long term, but in the short term of this year. And revolving accounts are things like maybe there's a school choice, which is a little bit broader based, but there's also circuit breakers. So is there a local cost that's definitely related to special ed that we could put or charge off to the circuit breaker account that then liberates some local money that we could use for this? So Dan's very good at, and he's very creative in those lines. So that's how we would approach it if we didn't have a grant. So I wouldn't want to say we absolutely need to have that type of grant or federal funding. We try to be as creative as we can internally to meet the needs.
And I appreciate that, Bob. And just to follow up on that, and this kind of spills over into finance as well. I think there's a lot of there's a relationship between what you folks are doing and what finance does. But school choice, as Bob said, that's pretty broad based, if you will. And this year we brought forward 372,000 and change, and actually we used that money as the source for getting a jump start on a lot of the PPE and other COVID-related charges prior to our grants coming in. And because these grants were all retroactive, frankly, to last March 1st, and they were. And we were able to make journal entries to reverse the charges out of school choice and back into the grants. And again, to Bob's point, the committee knows that we brought forward $1 million in circuit breaker from 20 into 21. And one could say, well, yeah, but we were out the last quarter of the year. Sure, fine, get it. Right, but we were a little bit creative in terms of how we were spending money and so on and so forth, and this was the first year that I can recall that the district brought forward even a dime of circuit breaker into the new year, again, just bringing my finance folks into the loop here. That is a goal for this year, for 21, to bring forward a sum of money, and we've identified a sum of money as a goal, as a target. Is what we do for 22, and I would argue, and I would argue with my auditors. Because circuit breaker can be used for any special education related expenditure. If so long as I can justify, and I can and I will, those charges, out of circuit breaker for special needs students, that just helps us and supports. At the end of the day, it supports the teachers. Carolyn, I'm looking at you. In the classroom to use these to be creative with our finances and to expand the pool of money that we have available, quite frankly. I'm still looking at you, Carolyn.
Adam, your mic's off there, pal.
I was going to say, man, did I need to respond?
No. It's all good.
Control D didn't work for me. Another window open at the agenda. All right. Yeah. So, I guess looking at other issues related to remote, and also, those that we have in person now in the buildings. I know one issue that was brought up at management last night was snow removal and ice treatment. Now, just making sure that that's still happening. We've got a giant storm coming, in what might even have started now. I don't know.
So, I'm the contact with the DPW directors. I began my communications with them early in the week. You know, I watch the weather. I mean, Daryl and I, Daryl has a hobby, if you will, of watching weather. That's his hobby, and he's kind of immersed me into that world, and it's actually kind of cool. And So, you know, and for the other new committee members, I don't know if you know it or not, but I'm the guy who's up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Thank goodness we made this call today at like 9:30. You know, but seriously, I'm the guy who's up at 3 o'clock. I'm talking to the DPW guys about the conditions, etc. So we have a game plan in terms of the buildings. They've received my charge about the expectations are for the storm. Don't forget, we still got to get our custodians into the buildings. They got to begin the cleanup, and they'll be going in at a certain time. And I've laid forward the expectations in a good way to DPW, and I'll be talking to the principals because they'll be checking the buildings, and when their custodians get into the buildings, the principals will hear firsthand, it wasn't plowed. And then I'll get a call or an email, and I'll reach out to the respective DPW director. Let's face it, we're paying for this, through our regional agreement. We're paying a goodly amount of money for this, and I get the fact that they're real busy. I do, but that is the game plan. There was, I think, Adam, too, that you're referring to. There was a situation in 2 buildings this week in Holden that were brought to my attention, and for the larger group, the ice, the parking lots were icy, black ice. And in one building, I believe, I'll stand corrected, I think there were 3 staff who fell. In another building, there was 1 staff person who fell and got a pretty serious injury. And so the call came into me, made a contact to DPW, and then in turn, I've got another contact in operations, and it is the expectation that the custodian, makes that phone call early when they get in, if there is black ice, so we can get a truck over there and treat the area before people come in. In one of the buildings, I did hear from one of the principals who said that whatever I said, and I was very nice, that I guess the next day there was still a problem, but it was still kind of black ice, but the truck had treated it, so it was all good. So to speed up the story, as I often say, to cut to the chase, I'm that guy, and Daryl and I and Bob, we meet with the town managers pretty much on a monthly basis, and we talk about these types of issues as well. But I'm the boots on the ground, so if there are any issues, please, I need to know, help me so I can help others as well, and speak to the respective director in the respective town.
Anybody else have anything related to the current remote phase, issues you've heard of, or anything like that related to facilities, safety? Anything? Nope. All right. I'll move on. Bob, if you want me to share the next document, the next topic is looking at reopening. There's the criteria for reopening document that you had shared with me. I'll pull that up.
Hey, Adam.
Yep.
The document that I shared with you about in-person updates, did you want me to go over any of that tonight, or do you guys have it in your email and you'll just get back to me in that way?
Oh, let me look. In-person updates. That was in response. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let me pull that up now before we move on.
All right, thank you.
Yep. I'll do that. Okay, I'll just share it with the group if anybody minds.
So Bob, I had shared the previous HVAC more specific to temperature issues. And then, so I took the responses that you gave us this evening and added it into the document, and I'll share that with my members.
Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, I just was looking for a general, are there any lingering concerns? The concerns that had been happening previously related to HVAC were like extreme temperature differentials, questions about whether the blowers were working, things like that. So in general, that seems to be much improved. And I think the teachers know that they should be going to their principals first, and then they can be followed up with. At the ECC, you talked about this a little bit, but not all of the thermostats are calibrated, but that has to do with valves, and the valves are being ordered. So, just so Mike and Krista, the Early Childhood Center is super old, so there's always stuff going wrong. And I know Linda and Adam know that because I worked with both their kids. Yeah, Mike?
I was just gonna ask to whoever can answer, is the ECC school on pneumatics?
Yes. Yep.
Is there any plans to change that?
Is there any plan to get a new school?
Or that? That might be a loaded question, I guess.
That might happen sooner. The controllers have been upgraded. There isn't a plan, Mike. The short and sweet is there is not a plan to upgrade to get them off of that. They've just upgraded some components to get it to work better.
And Bob, if I could just jump in for a second, I think that's an example of something that would not have been on our capital plan in past years, but would be clearly on the revised plan. And we prioritize the projects. I mean, ultimately, there's a couple folks who need to be part of this discussion, but again, given the fact that it's related to, I'll just say under the HVAC umbrella, if you will, just to use an umbrella, that would probably take precedent. And there is a cost. I mean, there is a pretty significant cost incurred there, and that's why I'm arguing that it would be on the capital plan and not in our operating budget.
So yeah, the document that you're looking at are responses that Bob had been working on to specific issues in different buildings. And so things seem to be moving along. Not everything is perfect, but definitely better than where we were last time we met.
And then I've got this document too that you sent out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
So then previously when we talked, a lot of the, of course, the people that are back in the building are the high needs groups. And so a lot of those students don't wear masks. And so there's additional kind of things that we wanted to put in place to try to make it as best we could. And I feel like it was Linda that said layers of Swiss cheese, which is now my favorite analogy. So one of those things is air purifiers. So after we met last time, the next day there were air purifiers in every classroom in the ECC. Which was wonderful. However, colleagues in other buildings have been expressing that they are requesting air purifiers and not getting them, or not really getting a response. And so my question is, are there more air purifiers available to people that want them? Or if there are not, I think the ones that are at the ECC could be reallocated, shared in some way, because not every classroom is in use at the same time.
Carolyn, we're going to have to look into this, and I'll have to get you a response. That's all I can tell you tonight.
Sure. The next one is about plexiglass dividers. The same thing. Some people that are still asking for plexiglass dividers for their students who are already in session don't have them. I know that that's been brought up to building administration. So
what we've done is we've got desktop. They're acetate. They're not plexiglass. They're self-standing. They sit on a desktop. As far as I know, Caroline, we've met every request that I've received. So I'll have to circle back to everybody to find out, like, is there something that I haven't received yet? And we've handed out over 100 of those. So I'm just, this is, I don't have an answer tonight, unfortunately, again, on this one. So I'll have to circle back to the principals and see where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then the last one we pretty much already went over. There was an example in Glenwood about bandwidth where sites weren't loading or the computers are slow, but now it sounds like maybe that's a processor issue.
Yep, we were in classrooms in Glenwood, and we measured, and it's absolutely the CPU. We gave one to one of the power users with the upgraded processor. She said it's fantastic, everything's running fine. So it's the device, it's not the bandwidth or the internet that's the issue here. So
thank you very much.
Sure, you're welcome. And Carolyn, one thing in terms of plexiglass, just so you're aware, and I know this might have come up in an earlier meeting that maybe we were part of, in some cases, because one individual has plexiglass and another doesn't mean that we're not providing everybody with it. It's that some people have said, I don't want that. This is fine for me, or I don't need that. So I think maybe the example of nurses might have come up. That's kind of in play here as well. So it might not be that we would provide the same level of plexiglass to every single person just because they happen to have a title or the same role. Some people are saying that doesn't work for me, or I don't want it. Or so we're trying to meet people as well as try to be somewhat consistent here. It's just a tough thing right now.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I can tell you just for this particular item, it was a request that had been put out in a classroom where students don't wear masks, and they wanted to be able to have the kind of dividers at the desk level, as opposed to the teacher's desk or something like that.
Right.
And they don't have them currently.
If the person's comfortable, anything you send me, just send me, like, Bob, it's this room and this thing, and we'll jump, I kind of need some info too, but I also understand people are like, don't tell them it was me kind of thing. So, whatever.
All right, so then I can follow up with you on that separately.
Perfect. Thank you, Carol.
Yeah. You can tell them outside of the meeting.
Outside.
It doesn't need to be public for that. Okay. All right, so I'm going to move over to the in-person side. And the first thing we had was the decision matrix that we were looking at. Can everybody see this pretty well? Zoom levels pretty good.
Can you bump it up just a tad, please? I'm old. My eyes.
Just get closer, or you do need to hold it further away.
Thank you.
All right, I'll scroll back and forth a little bit.
So,
do you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, I'll do that quickly, Adam. You might have to scroll a little as I'm talking, but I'll give you some things here. Essentially, what we did is we worked very closely with the Board of Health. One member in particular worked with, they have some sort of decision matrix where she's working out of, and it could be UMass, I don't remember exactly, but this came from that member. And we've reviewed it, we've added some words, took a few words out, we've added a couple of other qualifiers in here as well. Essentially what would happen is in that first column that's all the way to the left, there are 6 different domains. And Adam, if you could just kind of scroll down that first column there, people could kind of see. So staff resources, PPE, There's healthcare resources, the presence of multiple cases in the district, community positivity rate. That's all what's included in there in that first column. And then what we do is it's almost like a grading rubric. As you come across, you can see they're different colors. So there's green, there's yellow, there's orange, and off to the end there is red. And each one is a little bit more serious. So you can almost think of it in terms of maybe some crazy traffic lights. Green is, okay, you're good to go. You can pretty much do whatever you want. And maybe, Adam, if you scroll up to the top here a little bit, I could tell what each of these columns mean. It might be just above this where it tells us what it means. Where do they tell us? Well, this has been changed yet again. Is it at the bottom now? Where do they tell us what risk level 1 means? Go down just a little further here. There it is. It's just underneath. Okay. So green means essentially that you could be fully in person if you wanted to, except for a family that might choose to be remote for the year. That's cohort C. Yellow means that this is where you could still hold hybrid. You could be in hybrid if you want. It's the beginning of, yeah, some things are ticking up, but hybrid would still work. In person, fully in person, would not work. So in other words, the big difference between maybe a green level and a yellow level would be on the buses, on the seats on the buses. If we can jam those kids in there, we can be fully in person. We can afford 50 something, 55, 54 buses. That's what's in our budget. We can jam them full. We can be fully in person. Yellow means, all right, there's some caution you have to show. So you can't fill those buses to capacity. The kids have to be 3 feet apart. So that's about a third of the capacity of a typical bus. So in this case, hybrid learning could work in there. Orange, at the orange level, this is where you'd have discussions about, okay, so are we going to start peeling this back and to go remote, except for the kids with the highest needs? This would be cohort D kids in there. And then red would be, yeah, there's some serious numbers out there where we are concerned. This is where you'd only be bringing in kids that essentially have to come into school because of some situations that they're having at home. And so that's what we're using this matrix for. It would be, when Daryl and I ran through a potential one, we said, all right, pretend that today, right now today, is January 19th. And this is when we intend to come back and be hybrid. And we went through and sort of circled where these different things were. We ended up with one of the criteria was red, 2 were in the orange, 1 was in the yellow, and 2 were in the green. So it's spread all the way across. You can see that's how it would inform a discussion. You'd say, well, what the heck does that mean? Does that mean we can be hybrid? We can't be hybrid? What are we going to say? So to me, that's the power of this tool, is it helps to focus a discussion and push it forward based on where you're identifying in this whole matrix, where these different criteria are. So I've shared it with you. You could take a look and read the words and everything, but essentially that's it in a nutshell. I don't want to kind of bore everybody with it. This is, I think, a pretty powerful tool. It's also a collaboration between a lot of vested participants. It's some of the towns, select board members were on there. One of them was. There's all of the Board of Health members were on there, all of the nurses and central office administration. And we kind of crafted this. And Daryl's going to go through this on Monday's school committee meeting. But that's it in a nutshell of what we have here. I think this is a tool that does push us towards some informed discussions and kind of forces the discussion as well.
Mike, go ahead.
I was scratching my head. I didn't mean to have my hand up.
I caught you out of the corner of my eye. I thought you had a question.
That's what we were doing when we were going through this, like, holy cow, this is.
So I guess, I mean, I do have almost a clarifying question. You know, this isn't necessarily as soon as you move into, you know, one of these things goes into the next color, boom, we go to here, and then as soon as it goes back, boom, we go back. You know, it's like we're constantly looking at this. And again, I mean, it might be, you know, we're yellow for staff, green for PPE, or,
Yep.
you know, but, you know, healthcare resources, we're in orange, and,
Yeah.
you know, we're yellow for cases, and positivity, we're all the way red.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess I wanted to emphasize, you know, we're not making, it's not something that makes the decision for us. You know, it's not like, boom, you're at this number, this is what you do. You're at this number, this is what you do. It's at this number, you need to seriously consider, you know, all of these are in these positions. What does that mean for your community? And what does that mean for your students? So I definitely like this. Because I am fearful of you set a number and then you go with that, and maybe you're bouncing above and below that number, and you're going back and forth. And again, this tool the way I'm understanding it, this tool may also go down to the individual school level.
Yes.
You know, on that staff resources side, like,
yeah.
Okay, you know, I've got Naquag and Dawson. They don't have the staff this week. Like, we know there's so many that are out on quarantine or whatever it is. There's just not enough staff in those two schools. So those are going to go to remote. The others are still in hybrid. And then, you know, the next week it might be another different two set of schools, or everybody goes back to hybrid, or, you know, however that works. Yeah, so I do like the tool. Like any plan, I'm sure you guys might need to tweak it as we go.
Absolutely. To me, Adam, it's helping to push us to have conversations. So maybe an example would be, let's say the rates are about where they are now, and we're I don't know, a month into everyone's back in hybrid, but for whatever reason, we've had a run, like there's no more gowns left, there's no more gloves, and guess what? We can't order them either. That changes the whole thing here. Like, if you don't have this protective equipment, can we even afford to have the kids come in? Who are we protecting here? So suddenly it just might say, you know what, we gotta be hybrid here, guys. Sorry, that's just how it is, because one of the qualifiers has changed so drastically that's in here. So that's the power of this. I think it forces us to have conversations about very specific things.
And I am glad to hear that this wasn't just, you know, Bob Berlow's. This was I mean, or any single person's chart. This was with the boards of health. This was with administration. This was with, you know, the nurses. I think just having that very large buy-in from really all the stakeholders involved, I think, is good. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
So I have a couple questions. The first being, well, I really like this, especially with the emphasis on how no one criteria is the leading factor. It's everything plays a part, because we're in a very dynamic situation. But is this going to be presented to the rest of the school committee?
Yeah, I think it's on the agenda, and Daryl will be presenting it, maybe with the woman from the Sterling Board of Health, Paxton Board of Health, who was a big part of developing it. I think they're going to sort of tag team and present it.
All right, thank you.
To me, what it really gets at is how much can you tolerate risk, guys? You know, and here's some of the big criteria. How much can you tolerate risk on this one, on that one? And to Adam's point, maybe a few weeks in, we're like, you know what? This number is way too big or too small. We got to change that. Or these words don't really get at it. We got to modify that once we know a little bit more. But it's all about how much risk can be tolerated here before you need to take action. And that's tough to get at sometimes. And this is a pretty dynamic situation. So I think that's the power here that's embedded in this.
Linda, go ahead.
So I have 3 questions. One of them is just, I've seen, maybe I've missed it completely, a clear definition of cohort D, because I've heard it referred to as only our highest needs. I've heard it referred to as moderate and highest, and also others who are not in person now but will be. I just, what is the definition of cohort D? And that's one separate one. And
Sure.
then, so I don't know how you want to answer these or address them, but because that's also at the bottom of the orange column, I think.
Yep.
And then also, so this is the major criteria. Do you have a list of minor criteria anywhere? And how do you plan to look at this with any updates on new research on spread and or lack thereof or whatever? You know, since it's a novel virus, right? So there's going to be new information all the time.
Yep.
So is there like a review plan of new research, new information, and then the minor criteria?
So in terms of review plans, we don't have anything that's cut and dry in terms of when we're going to be looking at this. If anything changes at all, I think the tool says, come on back in. Let's see where everything's rated. Do you have to, is this a call to action? Do you got to change this or that? Can this still happen? So, and in terms of the tool itself, we're not set into like, this is the version we're using for all eternity. If something changes, as Adam brought up, and maybe I alluded to a little bit, we're willing to go in there and change a phrase or the words because we want it to reflect what we do believe is really important right now. So for instance, there's one of them that has some numbers there, the community positivity rate. Maybe that's got to get adjusted up or down. There's another one in there that talks about if there's 2 staff out or 4 or 6, maybe it's got to be 1, 2, 3. I see, once we get in and get some more experience, we're feeling we'll jump right in there and modify it as needed, because we're not safety experts and this is dealing with safety. So I'm not going to feel, and I know Daryl doesn't as well, that we have to hold the line with language that might be in here if it's really putting us in an unsafe predicament. You know, that's what I think is that's our approach to this anyways. We removed the minor criteria because it was getting way too messy. There were 7 or 8 things that were in there for minor criteria. And at one point I said, how are you making a decision? And the response was, I don't know. This is just becoming way too complicated. So then we looked at it. Can we just remove those and it'll make it simpler? And suddenly, oh, wow, this is much simpler. Yeah. I think this is what's important. So, and if we had maybe bigger brains or something, or people that were more knowledgeable, we might have more criteria, but I think this works pretty good for us. It's got language in there from the Department of Education that they tell us we have to use when we're evaluating whether we're going to keep something open or closed. So we added that in there. And I think that was a powerful step when we came to that conclusion. So that's where we are with the minor criteria part of it. Cohort D is different things, I guess, depending on where we are in our situation. So a subset of cohort D are the kids that are in right now. That's not all of cohort D. It's a subset. If we had different, maybe reopening criteria, if we had said, look at the absolute neediest kids are the only ones that are coming in. And originally, that's what we were talking. ECC, for instance, where Carolyn works, it wouldn't have been all the kids in ECC. It would have been part of the kids that go to ECC. The absolute neediest would have come in. So we've got more than the absolute neediest. Do we have all of the kids that are in ECC? No. I mean, in cohort D? No, we don't, because the principals are saying, look, I'd like to bring this kid in and this kid in. This kid needs to come in. And some of the kids that we're talking about now might have ed plans. They might not. They might be ELL kids. They might not. They might have a 504. Maybe not. But what we're seeing is they're having a seriously hard time engaging, to being present. We're not sure what's going on. In the high school, it might be kids that are flunking, like not just like, that kid, he just keeps getting a 60 or a 58. He's just not, it's a kid who's just, I don't know where the kid is. He's got 0 on all these things. We've been calling, we can't reach him. We have to do something. So in those cases, it might be some of those kids that we need to bring in because they're just falling off. They're not on any, we can't find them, that type of thing. They're not checking into the class. So it could be that those are the kids we need to bring in. They need some more structure, or at home, the technology just cannot work. So they can't access the learning. So we got to bring them someplace where the technology does exist to have the learning. It's those types of things. So that's what cohort D is. And Linda, I don't want to frustrate you, but maybe it's good that it's not a hard definition in there, because maybe first quarter, if I'm just thinking high school for a minute, maybe this is the number of kids that we think need to come in right now in cohort D, but maybe halfway through the year, whoa, we need to bring these other kids in here because there's other issues they're having with grades or something. And grades are very important in the high school because that's part of graduating, all that stuff, earning a diploma, setting you up for the rest of your life. Not so much grades in like a grade 4 or 5. I'm not trying to say that it's not important, but it's not as critical. It's not like, nope, you cannot graduate, that type of thing. So
then, and well, no, that'll derail us out of our purview of facilities. So never mind.
Okay.
Mike, yeah.
I got 2 screens going, so I have to watch where my mouse is for the microphone. My question is, so the community positivity rate, that's for the student and faculty body that is not affected at all by the general population, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that's the general positivity rate of the community. Holden's positivity rate. It's not just confined to the school. No, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's the Holden's positivity rate. It's not just the school community. It's the Holden community, the Rutland community, the Paxton community,
All right.
But taking out like Anna Maria, because they're doing constant testing. So they would have, like if you look at all the numbers, higher ed it's almost a third of the testing in the state, but their positivity is super low because they're just doing tons of it. So as I understand it, it's the community minus any higher ed within the community, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns, points for administration that they should consider before presenting to school committee on Monday?
I would suggest reconsidering some of the percentages, given I'm not sure what the percentages our towns are at right now. I'm not sure if anyone can possibly inform me what makes a town red, because people are freaking out about that. But as far as, more than 5% is definitely a concern, but what are we in right now, just to compare it to what I'm looking at? Does anyone know?
I believe Holden is at 6% right now, as of last week's. Actually, I have it up here. I can check. I can see. It's 6.23.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a feel for this.
So I can help you to answer that if you want, in terms of what makes the colors what they are. So Holden, that's a larger town. So what they look at is you would be red if you have greater than or equal to 10 average cases per 100,000 residents and a 5% positivity rate. This is all off of the Public Health's website. Mass.gov, I think you can get it to that way. Paxton, Princeton, Rutland, and Sterling, theirs have a different metric that gets them to red. They just need to have, over the last 14 days, greater than 25 total cases.
I have some personal feelings on that, but I'm not going to share them at this time.
Yeah, and now, I mean, those colors assigned within that state report don't necessarily, I mean, I think that 5% matches up, but the rest of it doesn't necessarily correlate to, like, if, one town's red, one town's yellow, that doesn't necessarily mean we're following red or yellow on this chart.
Correct.
We're using the same color. It's gonna fall out differently than just the map that the state puts in.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And what I read you was state numbers. That's nothing that's, I mean, that's the state definition. It's not us.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, let me stop sharing that and we'll move on to what's the next thing. HVAC update. We kind of, I think we tackled that already under the current stuff. Is there, I don't think there's anything else on HVAC. Are there any other questions on it? Yep, Mike, go ahead.
Is there anything aside from just comfort? Is there anything pressing that really needs to be done before January 19th? As far as ventilation or anything that there's some sort of requirement for getting back in school from different parties.
Yeah, Mike, that's a great question, and I'm thinking. I know that in Princeton there are 4 classrooms that have univent motors that are down, and those are older. The motor is a strange design, so we just can't buy an off-the-shelf thing and fit it in the thing. So those have been sourced, but they just haven't been filled, that order. So now we're looking at maybe taking the original motors out and having them rewound so that they can run again, which is a little bit higher cost-wise, but we're almost at that decision point. So if we don't know by Friday about the delivery of those, then that's the action we would take. I do believe, though, in Princeton, there are other classrooms that they could use if those were down. So that's why I was thinking that one through. That's one that's in my head right now that I know in terms of the facilities. Most other places, it's as something kind of breaks or doesn't go well. For instance, at Dawson a few days ago, a bearing seized on one of the rooftop units, and then the belt, because it was stuck and it was still spinning, it just burnt, and there was all this smoke and everything. And so we've resolved that. But I mean, that's an exhaust vent. It wasn't like for a classroom. So I think we're pretty good. The compressor we want to get that in so that the old compressor that's in Paxton that's powering the whole system isn't running as often as it is. It's leaking. The pistons are leaking a bit. So that runs a lot more than it should. And it's old. So we've got a new compressor coming in. But once that's in, we just replace it, and that should be good to go there. We're calibrating thermostats as much as we can, where it's just being a little bit too hot or too cold. We're doing those on after hours. We're updating, and I know it's not HVAC, but it's still part of this whole, is it safe to use the bathrooms? We're putting more dividers in. We're working our way through the schools. What that means is once we're in and we finish the divider work, then all the sinks and urinals can be used. But for right now, we've got some that are bagged and taped off with an X, like, don't use these. But we'll be slowly making schools as usable as possible with the facilities. So that's kind of where we're at there. There's nothing that's jumping out at me like, wow, this is a big one. It's that kind of stuff.
Okay. I know some school districts, due to my line of work, I happen to know, have certain unions have put forth requirements such as percentages of outdoor air, CO2 monitoring, humidity monitoring. Is there any of that going on? Changes or programming or?
That's a great question as well. So here's what we're doing, and we've just begun this. So, and part of this, the reason we're behind on this is we just don't have the personnel to get this done. So we are training the head custodian and the principal on using airflow meters, as well as CO2 meters. Once we do that, then they can measure the airflow in a classroom. I've shown them and created a spreadsheet as well that does all the calculations so that they can have calculations that are comparable to the ones that are in the report that Adam shared with everybody. Adam shared that report, and they had different different things they were measuring. I've created a spreadsheet that measures the same thing. All that the custodian and the principal has to measure is the square footage of the vent, the flow rate through there. They can put the numbers in, and then the physical size of the classroom, you know, the volume of the classroom, in other words, in feet. And I've got the whole thing. They just enter those numbers and it calculates it. We've used that in the ECC to show people comparable numbers of where they are in the classrooms after some work was either done, or in other cases where the rooms weren't measured ever because we just did a sampling in the report Adam shared. So that's kind of where we're at there. We've begun training. We've only hit a few schools up. We're going to hit some more up over the Christmas break and hopefully be able to work our ways through all the principals and head custodians, but it's dependent on vacations and that type of thing. But it's been slow to get that going. And I know we had said we'd get that done sooner, but it's myself and Jim Cavello that are going together to do all these trainings and show people how to work. And it's a manpower thing. There's just not enough of us that are dedicated just to that one initiative. And if we get a COVID call, all things get put on hold, for instance, you know, that type of thing. So, yep.
Linda, I think you had your hand next.
So there were a few things on the HVAC report from last time that I had questions about, and I was wondering if they were resolved. There are some buildings that are under the recommended 4 fresh air changes per hour, and I believe last time we talked about looking at how to address those. Has that been getting worked through?
Yes, we've worked through ECC and Paxton Center School. So for those 2 schools that had numbers that are under, and if anyone else has lower numbers, we will work through those. So let me speak to ECC and how that works. So those are some of the oldest air handlers we have in the district. So one thing we did was we made sure that all the exhaust vents, which sometimes are kind of down low and maybe there's a bookcase right next to it or things have been leaned against it, we made sure all exhaust vents were completely open. And we also cleaned them out as well. We worked with the air handlers themselves to make sure they were running as fast as they could. So with those old ones, that's kind of, you don't want the thing to be too loud or to seize up some of the bearings in there. So we're making them run as fast as we can. We've also blown out in between the fins in there. So they have some heating fins that are kind of close together. And over many years, they can get dust in there. And maybe the air doesn't get through as easily as it can. So we've cleaned those. We also worked and opened dampers as far as we could, but we don't want to be freezing coils and that type of thing. So between all of that, we then come back in and measured it. And in the case of ECC, the rooms that were low are now above that threshold of 4 to 5. I think they were 5.5 and maybe 7.8 or something were the new values, air changes per hour. So we got them up into that range. And for some other rooms, for instance, in ECC, where they said, hey, if they had problems, measure our room. We went through and measured those as well and put in the calculations and showed the folks what they got for values. So that's how we're approaching it. It might take a day or 2 to get that done once we get in there. So it's carving out some time as well. But that's what we've been doing. And it involves the custodians, our facilities director, and myself to kind of get all that done, as well as our HVAC guy. In some cases, if we got to get in there and disassemble and blow stuff out, and that happens after hours. So.
Okay. There were some other ones on the report too, that not just in ECC and Paxton, that had a few rooms here and there that were that were low. So I just wanted to make sure that those were getting addressed too.
That they will. This is what we've got done so far.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
I'm glad that there's movement. Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
I just need to really stress how you guys hired me as a district to do teaching and learning and professional development. And I do some of that now. I do a lot of this HVAC stuff. I do the COVID stuff. So there is a time constraint that's in here. And that's just unfortunate. It really speaks to us as a district how we've been maybe a little too lean with these mid-level administrative positions. We don't have a director of facilities. We have, I forget what Jim's title is, Dan, but we really need that type of person. We need a real director of facilities. We might need somebody else that does some of these other things. We're just kind of hitting the wall. And I think this is a bump in the road, and it really shows up to be a bigger bump because we don't have enough people to smooth it over as we need to, you know.
And Bob, I'm just going to jump in because to Bob's point, he's a deputy superintendent for teaching and learning, and he's involved in a world that I appreciate the work that he's doing. I sincerely do. But in the 22 budget process, which will be about very, very soon, I think, and selfishly, but I'll say it, but I think that we need to look long and hard at some of these mid-level positions, and this position here that Bob just spoke to, I think, is going to be highly critical for the next several years, because knock on my desk here, that there's a vaccine out there, and that there'll be several more out there, but it may be the summertime before all of us have the ability to have that vaccination. But COVID's not going away, and these issues. This is a wake-up call that these issues have to be addressed. With all due respect, these are ongoing issues that have just been pushed to the top of the pile, or whatever term we're supposed to use, but we can't ignore these once we get them resolved. We're spending. I know I'm on my soapbox. I apologize. Give me 30 more seconds. You started it, Bob. I'm on my soapbox, but we can't. These precious dollars that we've had to use to address these issues, either through the federal grants, the stimulus grants, the school reopening grant, and these other grants, to validate their purpose, we need to sustain. We need to sustain down the road the work, the activity that Bob has been immersed in since the summertime. I'm glad this is being recorded because we might need to make the same speech come budget time, with the full committee. But I'm serious. I'm sorry.
You're running out of your 30 seconds. So.
Oh,
Good one, Adam.
I think you get my point.
No,
Is that
I mean, it's the district has been lean for a long time, and we're seeing the effects of it. That's
Yeah,
you are. Yeah, you are, and it's impacting the worst place possible, the classroom.
Yeah,
and the kids and the faculty and staff.
Yeah.
We need to make an investment, in this type of position for 22, and that person needs to, take charge and lead the charge, and ensure that we don't find ourselves in the same conundrum that we're in now. That's the bottom line. Okay, sorry. Seriously, I appreciate the
Yeah.
minute and 30 seconds that you gave me. But I'm glad this is being recorded because I might need this speech again, or Bob or Darrell will, when we bring forward a position. And it may not necessarily be a new position, folks, but perhaps a rebranded existing position where there's already, a sum of money allocated, and it might cost us $20,000 or $30,000 more, maybe on the upper hand. But something, at the end of the day, it's money well spent. It is truly money well spent. We just need to think about the kids at the end of the day, because that's what it's all about. And frankly, it's my job to figure it out too. How do we fund these things?
And
That was
realistically,
2 minutes and 30 seconds. So thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
and realistically, that's the person that you want to have at these meetings. I mean, I enjoy these meetings. I certainly take pride in anything I get involved with. I enjoy helping the teachers out. That's dear to me, but that's really what you want to have at these meetings. Telling you.
I know that you don't want to hear this, Adam, and other folks, but I think at the end of the day, it would be a tag team between that person and myself. That he and I would probably co-chair these with if you were the chair, Adam, with yourself, because there is a lot of interchange between facilities and finance. They go hand in hand. They just simply do. And I see, my vision come next year is if I'm still a part of this, is that I apologize, maybe being biased, I apologize, but that he and I would co-chair with you or whomever, and we'd walk you all through these issues. And I said that's been my experience elsewhere. That not the same type of committee, but it's not the deputy superintendent for curriculum and instruction. He or she, they had their own challenges that they were dealing with, and I'll say it, the fact that Bob has immersed himself 100% of this, there might be some other things that he should be devoting his energies to that he's not. So, boy, that's a long 30 seconds, but you haven't muted me yet. So you haven't muted me yet.
It doesn't have that feature anymore.
You say seconds, I automatically hear minutes. So,
I'm feeling the love here.
hey, that's what you can. We're the fun subcommittee.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
we try to we get the work done, but get light if we can, while we can. I think that was Linda's question. Did you have a follow-up?
Oh, no, just to say that, like, in the best of times, right, the buildings are kind of that background to the students learning. And right now the buildings are like ground zero for making an inconsistent field for student learning. If we're not able to keep our people safe, then it's our kids who suffer from in and out of, in quarantine, out of quarantine. Now it's a new teacher who doesn't know me as well. Now it's back to the original one. Now it's just, in the best of times, the building is just the platform, right? You don't even notice it.
I'm on a roll, and you're gonna have to mute me. But we did our oil procurement. we did our oil procurement, we came in, I think, with a great number. We picked up, if I remember correctly, either $1.30 or $1.70. I'll confirm the number, but it's a savings from this year. From this year, the oil came in at a $6.99 per gallon, and that's down from $2.15 per gallon for 21. To Linda's point, I don't see that as a reduction in the budget, but I see that as an opportunity to reallocate resources within operations and maintenance. Where that's friendly for the committee to agree to. I mean, the administration will come forward, but that procurement and again, it's all about timing. It's all about timing. Is to reallocate that. The other thing, and actually, this does all come into play with facilities, even though I'm talking finance here. But I'm in the process too of trying to fine tune. This stuff is probably riveting to you folks, but our kilowatt usage and our kilowatt number for next year, which I'm doing now. And you're probably saying, why are you doing it now? Because I'm trying to strike the market when the market's down. And take advantage of a down market, at least in terms of that. Again, I actually have to circle back with my guy, the broker, but looking to realize a savings. Now, again, a lot depends too on usage, but the per kilowatt hour. I mean, I can't believe we're talking about kilowatts here, but this is actually important stuff. But it is because. If if I'm paying 10 cents a kilowatt, I can pay 8 cents a kilowatt, times 100 gazillion kilowatts. Well, there's a savings there. And it's a savings not to reduce the budget, but to reallocate the budget. And I'll be the first guy to tell you, because I've seen it for the past couple of years, is that to Linda's point, aside from the utilities, we basically have level funded every line in operations and maintenance. Aside from the utilities, because we have to build in that adjustment, but they're level funded. Just look at it, maybe that becomes the priority. And I'm not looking to dismiss the classroom, because that's what we're all about. But maybe all of this, maybe that gets the first priority. We got a meeting on Monday night with business and finance, and the agenda there is FY22 budget priorities, and you better give Mike a heads up, because I'll probably will be able to shut my mouth. But I'm serious.
You are.
It's absolutely true. Like Linda said. I mean, the buildings are the background until something goes wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if a building goes down, nobody's going to school.
Yep.
That's it. I mean, that's it. I'm gonna go to Carolyn first. Then Mike, I see you and your hand raised too.
This was you mentioned Jim Cavello is involved in a lot of these issues. Is he, I know that his hours were cut. Are they still cut, or has he been made whole?
He's 5 days a week now.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
Mike.
Was there someone else I should be grilling my technical questions with? I didn't realize that you had taken on all this, Robert.
No. My thing is, it's about kids. So early on in this whole process, it became apparent that, we needed a little more help in certain areas so we could get to the kids ultimately and get the kids back in and get the teachers up and running and get them to feel safe. So that's why I jumped into the fire, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat, because it needed to get done. We just needed to have someone else come in and help out with these things. And my point wasn't about me. It was about the fact that I believe, and I've been in other districts, Wachusett is lean, and I think it's too lean. And I think this is really bringing it to a head, to the point where this isn't sustainable. We need to get people in and manage these things. There is no way that teachers in ECC should be crying to me, physically crying, about air changes. Are you kidding me? It should be about, I tried this lesson and it didn't work. It shouldn't be that they're even talking about air changes. We have to get someone in and make these things all disappear and make these things work. And we need that person in there full time. Yep.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Adam, I think Krista has a question, or I saw her hand up.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
I have 3 screens. And I could not find my mouse. I'm so sorry. So, okay, simple but maybe hard question. Then, how do we get that person? And can we do that? Are we capable of making some sort of decision within here to make that happen, or is that happen elsewhere? Can we push that to happen? What can we do to help facilitate that hire?
Yep, I think it would be part of the FY22 budget, and I think the biggest help you guys could do is either to answer some questions maybe at the full committee when they're asking about, well, what's this position? I don't understand this. Why is that this? And that's where I think you guys could really help to support that is at that level.
And again, if I may, we're not sorry, we're not looking so much for a new position, but maybe to take existing resources and to reallocate existing resources. You know, where the rubber's going to hit the road is to do that. It's going to cost some money. So you know, someone's going to say, "What you want to pay this person $115,000?" Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do, because that's what the market says that person should be paid. And if you want to sustain all the work that Bob has done from the summer to the present and with Jim Cavello, but allow him to you know, even though you know Bob is going to be retired, sorry if they didn't know that, you need to pay for quality workmanship, so to speak. So when someone says, so we're adding 30,000, I hope that all three of you or four of you put your hand up and say, yep, that's right, we are. We saved 120,000 in our oil, or whatever the number was. I'll get it for our next meeting. So we're taking of that savings, we're taking 30,000 of that, and we're going to put it over here. Or maybe not. You know, maybe there's someplace else within the budget that we can reallocate. But you know, if someone questions, we're paying that for that. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
I think what we're advocating for is to be frugal and not cheap. And I think, unfortunately, Wachusett's been a little too cheap in the past, and it's really catching up with us now. It just is.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, the subcommittee, it definitely is highlighted that.
I'm on a roll. Get through this agenda because we're never going to get out of here tonight. But there are also Mike's pretty good. He's chiming me now. But seriously, I mean, I did an analysis. I actually did an analysis, and we never talked about this, Adam, well over a year ago. I did a third-party analysis on operations and maintenance, and I can show you ways that I'd have to resurrect it and probably have to bring the vendor back who did it. But there are ways that we can save cash by reallocating existing resources. The challenge becomes, and I'm on my soapbox, Bob can see it, I'm on my soapbox, but I'm serious. The challenge becomes is that you got to step up to the plate and you got to be willing to make the hard decisions and make the decisions, period.
Yeah.
And you know, this is about what's best for Wachusett, what's best ultimately for the kids in the classroom and the teachers, okay? And you got to make those hard decisions. And I'm not, Bob knows this, I can give you, I will give you at our next meeting an analysis that was done, and where we can make some significant inroads in cost savings in operations and maintenance, cost savings that can be reinvested or reallocated someplace else.
Good.
Do I become a pumpkin at 9 o'clock? Probably do. Lucky you folks.
On the capital plan.
Carolyn, yeah.
All right, I am going to move it along. So I guess current status of buildings for reopening. I mean, we've hit HVAC. I know when we toured, there was a lot of things that were pretty much ready. We've talked about bathrooms a little bit tonight. I know one of the things I have in there, spacing within the classrooms.
Yep.
I guess, where are we with that? I know most schools are able to do 6 feet. There's some that can't. We know the high school is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
That's the most affected by that with the small classrooms. So if you could just update us on that.
Sure. If I could speak to this, wherever possible, we are 6 feet apart. And I would say that 2/3 of our schools absolutely can do that in every single learning space. Now, it gets a little more complicated in maybe some of the other schools. The high school is its own animal. That's simply because the physical size of those classrooms is pretty darn small. And when you look at spacing out the chairs in there, and we need to get about half, a little less than half of the kids that are normally in there so we can get them in for cohort A and cohort B. And that we've got the desk space less than 6 feet, but they're not 3. They might be 4.5. They might be 5. Adam, you were in some of those classrooms with me. It wasn't like they were right on top of each other in those classrooms, but they're not 6. In some of our other classrooms, the challenge becomes it's the cohorts, the number of kids that are in each cohort. Unfortunately, we're talking about, we'll get half the kids in on cohort A and half in on cohort B, and we try to make that half and half, but in reality, it's not. So we tried to honor things like a certain family might say, I want all my kids in on cohort A, so they're all off and home on these days, and I can set up my home work schedule or my babysitting, or Graham's going to come over on these days, that type of thing. And it doesn't, in some grades, split right down the middle. So maybe if let's say there's 22 kids in a classroom, it's not 11 and 11 in some cases. In some cases, it might be there's 8 that are in one, and in the other one, there's many more than 8. So that becomes the challenge. And in a few of the schools, they're saying, based on the cohorts I have these 4 or 5 classrooms where I can't quite do 6 on this day, on the cohort A day or the cohort B day, because I have to push the chairs closer because I got to fit 2 more chairs in that room, those types of things. So that's where we're at. It's not to say that we couldn't change those cohorts, but now we're back to another thing that sort of complicates this. In some cases, the bus runs, because you got to bring the kids in. We've already set all those bus runs up at this point in time. And Dan knows, he's been in on those meetings. We've told them we're making no changes to the bus routes for right now, so they can kind of finalize all this stuff. We're not going to make any changes to the cohorts, we told them. That becomes another problem, because now if I'm not coming in on cohort A, I'm on cohort B, I got to be on the bus on Tuesdays as opposed to Thursdays and that type of thing. And I can't fit you in there. So it gets a little bit complicated when you start trying to move kids from one cohort to the other with the availability of seats on a bus as well. So it's not a real simple fix there. Our ultimate goal is to try to make sure that we are 6 feet apart in every classroom, but the high school will not be there. There's just way too many classes. It's not 3 or 4. It's a big chunk of the building has those classes that are that size. What the principals have told me that have these situations where maybe it's just a cohort, a certain days like cohort B, when they're in, I got to have the desks a little closer because I got to fit those other 2 in there. They've said that there won't be any masks breaks in the classroom. They'll find another location for that. They've reassured me that as much as possible, they'll be having the kids like leave and go if they got to do the mask, or in the hallway where they could be 6 feet apart, or in a pod, or those types of things. So that's how we're trying to work this to ensure that we're as safe as possible here. That's what I've got to say on that front.
I don't know who was first.
Go ahead, Mike. I think you were first.
Go ahead, Mike.
I just wanted to specifically ask, and I did step away for a minute, so excuse me if
Sure.
you might have to repeat yourself. But at the last school committee meeting, which would have been my first, I brought up the fact that the state has said that 3 feet spacing is fine, and I was told that the district I'm not sure if it was a vote or how they established it, but the district said it has to be 6 feet. I was curious what's being done about that, and also if gyms or large open spaces can be utilized for mask breaks inside, because I don't see the logistics of getting a bunch of first graders outside for a mask break in the middle of January.
Yeah, that's your last question, and maybe I'll look to the group for the first one there. We can use any space. So in some of the schools, maybe 4 classrooms open onto a larger area called the pod, and they could go in there simply and have a mask break. They could use the gymnasium. They could use the cafeteria if it's in between servings, those types of things. They could use almost any space. Some buildings where you first come in, it's pretty wide open there. It's the welcoming foyer. We could use that space. They could use almost any spot like that where they could be distance apart. So we wouldn't have to have them go outside. In the ECC, we've just made arrangements that they could use downstairs where we used to hold meetings, so they could kind of have mask breaks. And for them, it's more energy breaks. Like they gotta burn off some energy. It's not the mask sort of thing. I'm unaware, you guys can help me out here, that we voted that it has to be 6 feet, because all along we've been going under that premise that we're going to follow the state guidance, which is as much as you can do 6 feet, but if you have to, it's no less than 3 feet. So
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you guys to help me out there.
I mean, I'll jump in, and Linda may have a little more input. But the way I understand it, Desi came out and said, you got to have spacing of at least 3 feet. And the committee looked at that and said, we're not really happy with 3 feet across the board. We want to go for 6 feet anywhere we can. It wasn't a vote on it. It wasn't any sort of official action by the committee, but it was a general point of discussion, I guess, during a general meeting that, let's get the spacing as far apart as possible and try to maintain the 6 feet anywhere we can.
So you don't foresee an issue with, I don't know what the word would be to use, but kickback on not having 6 feet? Or difficulties?
No, I mean, I wouldn't characterize it as that. I maybe I'm not following, but I mean, it was the general consensus that 3 feet was a political decision from the state to try to pack more kids in, not a safety decision. Yeah. Because every single organization that has to do with safety agrees that 6 feet is the absolute minimum. So that was where our discussions were, but there was no vote. It was all just a general agreement that based on
that's why I'm getting a little confused as to what's being followed and what matters, where the line is.
Mike, I'll say this. We took that as marching orders, and we tried to space everything at 6 feet. And in some colleagues I've talked to said, yeah, you do 6 and then move them to 3 feet apart. We didn't do that. We moved them just slightly closer so we could fit maybe the extra 2 or 3 desks in the room. We didn't just go to 3 feet, which would allow a lot more desks to be present in a room. So we tried to use those as marching orders. And where masks are definitely off, and that's in the cafeterias, we've set our minimum distance of 8 feet from the center of one seat to the center of the other. So we're using 8 feet of distancing in those locations, because we know kids will have their masks off, for a longer period of time than just a few minutes. So that's what we did there to try to be as safe as we could. I'm just telling you guys the reality of where we're at right now. That's all.
Linda, I think you were next.
Yeah, as long as that's it. It is continuing on with the 6 feet and the and so on, because I guess what I just would like to put forward is that with the kind of contact tracing that is necessary, I'm really worried about having the lack of 6 feet, as it's going to be. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't notice. But I'll wrap it up really quick. Just that I'm afraid a penny wise, pound foolish situation because of having to do that much more contact tracing if there are closer than 6 feet distancing. And that's all. I'll shut up now.
Linda, my bigger concern in terms of like, so let's say we're back in business and we've got the, cohort A coming in and B and all that, is the buses, not necessarily in the classroom, because the kids are 3 feet apart on the bus. So, that's, we can control, we can tell teachers, look, that kid has to sit here at lunch. That kid has to sit here in your classroom. We can, as much as we say we want to have assigned seats on the bus, but we're not in there assigning the seats. It's on the bus driver and where they're, all that stuff. So yeah, that's a little bit out of our control, but the bus companies assured us they're going to work with us and all that. But for me, that's outside of my direct control. You know what I mean? So I'm a little more concerned there, and they're 3 feet apart on the bus. So,
All right. I've got Krista and then Carolyn.
I think it's all been kind of said at this point now. But so I like remember that conversation that we had in school committee, and it was, and we had the same questions, Michael. It was, well, where is that coming from? Why is this decision being made? And it was a conversation, and everyone was able to contribute to that. And it was that we kind of decided to go with the CDC's guidelines that are still saying to this day 6 feet. So that seems to be the safest distance that we all had conversation about. But and to Linda's point, yeah, it seemed like there were a lot of changes very quickly, and that there was like a decision from like Desi, like, oh no, actually it's 3 feet. Like it was kind of a weird, like, oh no, just it's this, everything's good, kind of, let's put a bow on it and make it pretty. And it wasn't, and a lot of us had an issue with that change that happened so quickly.
Can I respond to that quickly?
Yeah. I'm
just trying to voice my concern of potential issues between people that aren't okay with the 3 feet, if 3 feet's going to be in place in certain places instead of 6 feet. I'm just seeing foreshadowing, if you will.
So
that's my concern.
I think from my viewpoint on that, I don't think we're at 3 feet in any building.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
okay. Thank you.
Looking more 5 feet. There might be a couple of classrooms that are at 4.5.
Yep.
And again, I think some of that is a little different. From what I remember seeing at the high school, if they had to compress it a little bit, it was a little more front to back.
Yeah.
It was people next to each other. So you might compress the distance this way, so that everybody's facing in the same direction, and you're still in a little more spacing left to right. So it's not that, and again, I think it's that family's decision. Like, they're gonna know this is the situation at the school I'm going to, and this is gonna be part of the decision or part of the factors that go into my decision. Is my kid going to be participating in hybrid or not?
Thank you.
A little unfortunate, I think.
I apologize for the rabbit hole we went down.
No, that it's a rabbit hole that needs to be gone down, honestly.
And yeah, I mean, honestly, sorry, just like a little bit of an opinion. It's a huge bummer. Like, it's a huge bummer. We're all bummed out. It's not awesome. Like, how many people can take an art class right now? 5?
Can take an art class?
Yeah, in that art class. How many people can fit in that art class? How many?
In high school? Where are we talking?
In the high school.
But with the tables there, I believe it's either 10 or 12.
In there, really? I
Yeah.
thought there was a picture of like there can be like 5 people because there's 5.
No, I think Adam, you and I went in there. It was a picture of part of the room. It wasn't all the
Oh, okay.
tables. I think there's 12 tables in there.
Still a bummer. Still bummed.
Yep.
Yeah, the finance rooms, it was appalling. You could fit 4 times as many people in there as you can now, just due to the way some lab tables are, things like that. And,
the labs, the science labs, all that stuff. It's can you use commonly shared equipment? Maybe not. All that stuff. It's a huge bummer all around. It just is.
With the microscopes, that's everybody's favorite part.
It is.
Sad.
Linda, is it a follow-up to this?
It's a follow-up, yes.
Okay.
Just on the bus and the 3 feet. At this point, I don't recall from the transportation survey choice that parents were asked to make, but were they made aware that students are 3 feet apart on the bus? Because that's huge. And that's a very good point taken from Mike. Like that. I mean, I know I signed up to drive my kid, but that was just based on my own, control freak nature, not because I couldn't guarantee 6 feet of space and she gets motion sickness without wearing a mask. That was like, you know what I mean? Like that's the level of my consideration.
Linda, I can't answer that question. I do know this because I was part of helping to develop it. I know that in a couple of the presentations Daryl did, he showed the picture from DESC of the bus and it had like the spacing on it or something like that. I don't know with the transportation survey because I wasn't involved in that, what was really said. So I can't answer that.
I would really encourage you guys to add another thing, of course, but just to make sure that parents are going in eyes open so that the trust can be continued to be built upon between the parents and the district.
Yep, I will certainly share that.
Maybe just, I mean, obviously add it in some wording, but then, to scale, drawing the distance on there, like this is actually 3 feet, because I think people see it and they're like, oh, okay, there's distance.
Yeah, and adding words, Krista, too, so that there's no
Yeah,
confusion.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Carolyn, I'm going to go to you.
So I know that we've been talking about the distancing, but I'm also wondering what the consideration for numbers in a given room is. So for example, if there's like the media center at the high school that has, I don't know, like 50 kids in it, 90 kids, something like that. What's the consideration for that? Because it's an awful lot of people to have in one room, even if they are spaced by 6 feet. And I'm also thinking of the transition in and out. Like, if that many students are in one place, are they going to be able to get in and out without breaching the social distancing?
Yeah, we're looking at all those things. We absolutely are. Adam saw the setup in the high school media center. We've talked about setting up additional desks in part of the gym that we will be using for phys ed classes as well. And the reason there is because there's 2 means to get in. There's 2 different entrance exit spots in there, and they're separate from each other. So we're looking at all those things. Then does the air exchanges work for and support that many kids? So those are all the things that we're looking at as we try to set up these extra learning spaces here. It will be that in the high school there will be some locations where there'll be more than the classroom number of kids. So in a typical classroom in the high school, if you're looking at somewhere between 10 to 14 kids in there, these spaces are much bigger than that. And Adam, I don't know if you recall the number that we were looking at for the media center, but it was something like 60 or something, or 70. It was in that range anyways.
That's a good number.
Yeah.
I don't remember what that number is. I remember I mean, in the central cafeteria area, it was written change, if I remember correctly. But again, that's spaced even further, and it's a huge area.
Yeah, there were over 100 in there. Yeah. So it's a bit. It's big. It's just. It's where we're at right now, trying to make all this stuff work. It's not just the classrooms. It's not just the buses. It's all these things. It's a bit challenging.
I think the short answer is no. There's not a set number that's a cap. It's kind of custom for each room. Any other questions on spacing, status of buildings in general? Nope. Awesome. We can move on. So the next topic I had was logistics issues. And I wanted to bring it up because the logistics of contact tracing. This is a topic at our last meeting. I'm sure Linda remembers. While the district has a pretty good contact tracing procedure in place, we've got 150 kids in the building right now. When we're looking at 10, 15, 20 times that in the building, that's 10, 15, 20 times the cases and contact tracing as we're looking at it. So, as we expand, we need to make sure that, one, the procedure is able to scale, and two, I mean, if Bob's doing every single one of these, Brendan Keenan, I mean, can you do 20 times as many of these?
Nope.
How do we expand that so that we're able to maintain that?
Yep.
That was one of the big drivers behind delaying it.
Yep. Yeah, I think in the long run, Adam, we need to streamline some of our processes, but also to get a larger team that's involved in it as well. And that could include a bigger role for school nurses. It could include assistant principals and principals both being involved. And it's not a solid foundation, but it could include having some of the volunteers that spoke up at our last school committee meeting being part of that bigger group as well. So it's probably going to be a mixture of all those once we get in. And we're really hoping that the inoculation has a really nice impact on things, but we won't know that until late in the spring, early, near the end of the year at the best. So that's where we're at right now. And if it starts to overwhelm us, then that matrix we looked at, we'll have to address that in a very, honest way and say that we cannot handle this right now. There's too many cases and we'll have to be remote again. So,
Mike.
So one question that's somewhat unrelated, I think, but I don't know who to ask. Is there a plan? What's going to be done about substitutes? Because I'm just thinking, like right now, there's no substitutes from what I've been told.
Yep.
What happens when people have to quarantine?
Yeah, that's going to be a big challenge. So are we shutting down a program? Are we shutting down a school? Are we shutting down a grade level? It's those types of questions. Here's one thing we've done, Mike, to at least start to think about this process and be a little proactive in it. We've told building principals that they can hire a building sub, and that's not the answer by any means, but at least it would be a person that we'd have on the payroll that's in-house that would sub for anybody that's out. The high schools had a little bit of a head start on that. We gave them, because of the size of their population, number of teachers that they have in there, to hire 3 building subs. So the plan, as they thought it through, and it made some sense, is, all right, so if we have 2 teachers out, but there's only 1 building sub, can we collect those kids together to some larger location where this one person can monitor all the kids that are in person in that day? That's what we need to explore in all of our buildings, is how do we leverage that type of thing. The other thing, maybe the triage plan that the high schools come up with is, well, I'm the principal. Maybe I have to go sub and be in that classroom today. It's not ideal. Maybe my AP has to come in there as well. So it's looking at short term. That's maybe what we have to do for a day. But certainly, Mike, as you said, if somebody's quarantined, you're not doing that for 14 days, because in 14 days, I'm sure the principal and the AP are going to be needed other locations. So we have to have those discussions. We've begun to have them, but we have to have them to a level where we have a concrete plan in place. We know what's going to happen. If this happens, then what? If this happens, then what? We can pull a few district people to be in the building to help out, but you can't do that every day. So, I mean, there's maybe a survival tactic for a certain 1 day, but 2 days, but beyond that, we need something different. And that's where realistically we might have to close some things down just based on the lack of adults to be there with the kids that are coming in person.
Well, is anything in the works that's going to be done with that in the next few weeks? Because
Absolutely. Yeah. We're in the midst of those brainstorming discussions right now. That's what we need to firm up and finish. Yep.
my other question is there any sort of Excel sheets or software utilized for contact tracing, something to track who's been with who, not physical location tracking, just logistics on a spreadsheet sort of thing?
Yeah, what we do is we have I would say it's pretty detailed spreadsheet that we use every time, every event. And we not only that, we document the conversations that we had. So because once you get beyond a certain number of these, you can't remember the details. You're like, yeah, there was one in the ECC last week, but I don't remember, did we? So we document pretty much our conversation, our brainstorming about close contacts, not close contacts, what our ultimate decision is. We do all that stuff. We have in it as well the person, the town that they live in, because that's the Board of Health who then has authority over them. The dates that we said that the meeting was, when we said they could come back to work, all those types of things. A column that says, were they contacted by us, by the Board of Health? So we keep track of a lot of that stuff in there. And then when they get interviewed, if there's some information that comes up from that person, we also go back and backfill it in there so we can keep track of that as well, because that sometimes plays a lot in a future episode. Like, wait a minute, they said, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, that's so we got to call this person now, and those types of things.
Okay, I'm just picturing a very, very large flow chart in my head.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. We reach a decision as a group. We reach consensus. Ultimately the Board of Health has authority in terms of and Dan was a personal example of this. Is Dan a close contact? Is he not? You know, he had some issues in central office here, and we had to like interview and do all that and work with Dan around all those things. And it's not our call. We could say, no, we need Dan in, for instance. Let's just use that as an example. But the Board of Health says, no, Dan has to be remote for so many days. And we just, yeah, that's how it goes.
Okay, thank you.
There was an issue in the business office a couple months ago.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
impacted me.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a hand up? No? Okay. So I mean, that actually pulled in a little bit of the contact tracing and the personnel side. Because I mean, Mike's question was exactly what I wanted to bring up in personnel, is the substitutes and, you know, that whole aspect of it. You know, the next thing was PPE quantities and distribution. I know, I mean, I saw we're in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot of PPE. I know it comes into the high school and it's gone out to all the schools because that guy did not want it in the area in the high school. He was like, get it out. It's great. I mean, it's better than someone being like, okay, this is my stuff. I'll dole it out piece by piece. He's like, get it out of here. It's not clean anymore.
Adam got the dirty look. The head custodian takes a lot of pride in keeping this area very clean. And as a district, we're storing this stuff, and it was in the midst of them ripping pallets apart and going delivering this to this school and that. And Adam comes in and takes a picture, and the guy looked at him like, "What are you doing? Where's that going?"
I mean, and this is in like where the boilers are and all that. I mean, it looked nice. If you just go to the PPE, it is a nice looking area. Which, not to be said, it looks better than my fields. So I mean, it's good. I mean, this stuff's definitely getting spread out to all the schools. But could you just give us a quick update? You know, I guess how much do we have on hand now, and how are we looking for the rest of the year?
Yeah, we bought what would last us 2 months with everybody in, and that's in the schools right now. So they've been picking away at that with the few teachers that are in and the few students. We've ordered another 2 months worth, and there's a spreadsheet that I used that's off of the Department of Education website, and it tells you quantities based on number of weeks and all that. So we bought another 2 months worth of, and that's coming in. Dan talked to you earlier tonight about his work to have another grant in there. That would get us like another month's worth of stuff. And, then we're kind of near the end of the year. I'm holding back personally on spending the limited number of textbook dollars we have this year, because if we have to tap something, it could very well be that, so that's what I'm kind of holding off. We spent some of it, but I'm not putting everything in play that we would normally if we didn't have this there. We've also got school choice money that, as Dan said, it was where I took initially and bought stuff from, and then we offloaded the cost of that once I started to get the grants in, and I've done that twice so far. So that's been, as of recently, made pretty good again. Not whole completely, but we've been able to get that back up. So there's another source of funds that we could use possibly for PPE. So all those things are in the mix for maybe if it get us through the very end of the year. So I think we're in pretty good shape.
And the other pool too is if we had to tap into this pool, it's not very extensive, but it would be building rental money as well. And again, just given what's been going on for the past 9 months, that well has pretty much dried out. So if we had to, again, I don't have the numbers committed to memory, but there might be 10,000 in one account here or one account there. There are 1 or 2 buildings that, just given the activity in the buildings, like Mount View has a church that rents some space over there. So that helped them to make deposits into that account. So it's another pool of money, not a heck of a lot, but if we had to go out and buy a pallet of whatever, boom, you could tap into that, and it's a very appropriate use of that money to get that material. Plus, though I haven't heard officially, I mean, with the new administration coming in and a new Congress, there is hope. Nothing definitive, but there is hope that there'll be another stimulus package of some sort for education down the road. We've got a president, I think, who's very sensitive and committed to that. So, but it's not going to be here on January 21st or January 20th. Maybe middle of March, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
All right. Any questions, comments, concerns on PPE?
I was wondering, are the kids wearing their own masks from home, and what level of protection are the masks for the staff?
So some kids, we certainly encourage that if that works best for a kid to bring their own mask in. We do have multi-layered disposable masks available for students. We bought smaller sized ones. They're called kid sized. We've got those in. I heard from folks in the ECC that those are still too big for their kids to comfortably fit. So just recently we got some cloth, I think they're called infant plus sizes, which are for very small heads, not infants, but a little bit, they're infant plus. And so we've got those in play now. We've also heard from some speech pathologists that they need to have ones that the mouth can be seen through, so some clear ones there. And we also heard from the music folks that they need ones that actually have a hole in there so they can fit the instrument in there. And then they need a mask for the front of the instrument. So I'm in the process. I talked to Dan today. We're going to order those on Friday. So we're kind of getting them what they need. A typical mask that, per the DESE guidance on this, and this comes from the Mass Department of Public Health, it's multi-layered. It's a mask that can fit on the head and covers the mouth and the nose. For people that maybe are consistently much closer, we have KN95 masks. Those will stop a greater extent of particles that are in the air than a regular disposable mask will. And for nurses or people that maybe have to be in the medical waiting room where it's a suspected case that you're in close contact with, we have N95 masks that they can use. We also have face shields that are available for everybody that they can wear in front of the mask for additional protection. We have gloves, and in some cases where people might be changing a student or in very close proximity to maybe a student that drools a little bit or something like that, or can't control themselves quite as much as other kids. We have gowns, both washable ones and disposable ones. Yeah, there's 2 levels of gowns that we have. So if it's wow, that kid had a fever and that kid throw up, we have these higher level gowns that like a custodian would use if they have to go in and clean things up like that, as opposed to, just a regular kind of gown. So.
Okay. Looks like we got a variety of options, so thank you.
Yeah, we kind of do. Yeah.
All right, anybody else in PPE? All right. Any other COVID-19 related stuff before we end this? For once, twice? Oh,
I'm just going to say that this is awful. The standard COVID is ridiculous. But
yes.
This is our reality right now is nonsense. That's all I have to say. I just felt like it can't be said enough.
Dan, anything that you want to add?
Oh, yeah,
Are you serious?
Oh, no.
I actually do, but it's not COVID related, but I was going to wait to the end.
Oh my gosh.
If I could add just one thing for you in the future, guys, in your agenda that I shared out with you during this meeting. So it's a copy of the agenda that Adam's been working off of. At the very bottom, you guys have some policies there. I gave you a link that you could use in the future to the Mass Association of School Committees, and it lists their model policies. Unfortunately, a lot of the policies that we have actually came from Cleveland, Ohio, and they're pretty old. So, according to Massachusetts laws, Massachusetts expectations, I'd kind of encourage you to check out the link there to make sure that what we have in play actually meets the letter of the law and the intent of the law here in Massachusetts. You can do searches by keywords. You could do searches by a policy name. That's what most school districts and school committees use is this site to get a model policy in there. And I'd kind of encourage you to use this tool here. So I just wanted to leave that with you guys today because I know you had mentioned there's some policies you're going to be looking at in the future.
So, Adam, if I may, Krista opened the door. Got to blame someone, right? Being sensitive to the time. What I'd like to propose for the next item is that administration would welcome the opportunity to present to the subcommittee at its next meeting a draft of proposed changes to the 2 policies here, and we can discuss those further. But we'll and again to the full group. What I had mentioned to Adam earlier today is that typically in business and finance, what I do and I'd just like to be consistent, if we can, is that if we're looking to amend a policy, and I've got some pretty old policies too, and I'm doing the same thing in B&F. I'm looking at my policies and tackling them one by one, quite frankly. And have you seen at the full school committee meetings? You know, I mean, I'll be all gray by the time that these things get done, but it's necessary. But what I do in B&F is that I'll take a policy and I'll prepare a draft that I'll walk the committee through, and they might make a change or two, or they might say it's good and let's bring it forward. So that being said, I'd like to do these here is take a bite at the apple, and then bring it to you at our next meeting and to dissect.
Yep. No, I think that's good. I just wanted to put these on here so that we're aware. What I did, at previous meetings to this, I had just said, okay, let's start with the first one on the 7,000 list. So I went through and I looked, and these are the two oldest ones. I think they were last looked at in 94 and 95. So I said, all right, let's start with the oldest ones and update those. So, Dan, I would absolutely appreciate a starting point for that from administration. I think that'd be really, really helpful. Just one point on 7158, the emergency. We also have 7156, which is an emergency response plan. And there's a lot of overlap between the two. And I almost think we could get rid of 7158 and go to just 7156. Because if you look at MASC, that is the site that Bob had sent out. The only one that has to do with building evacuations is this policy, which kind of wraps in both of those policies. So, I'm also good for trimming down, rules and regulations, make it simple and easier to follow instead of following one and missing the other. So I think that would be good. But that's really all I wanted to talk about tonight on policies. I'll send out this link to everybody, along with, I think, Bob, did you send out this criteria for reopening to everyone? You're on mute. You're on mute, Bob.
Thank you. It's getting late. I believe I shared this document with everybody, as well as sharing the plan, the matrix, the decision matrix as well. But you can get at it through the link in here. And if not, Adam can send you guys or share it with you. So. Okay.
All right. Good. Yeah, and that MASC policy thing is good to look at just in general. One other thing to bring up at the management subcommittee meeting last night, every subcommittee was strongly recommended to make a meeting in January or February that was only for policies. I mean, we're all super busy on all this stuff, so it was really recommended to squeeze in an extra meeting, because this is how it goes. We have these policies in, they're the last thing on the meeting because they're not the current topic, and we always put them off. I mean, even during regular years, that's how it typically goes. This is one of the main responsibilities of the school committee, is setting policy for the district. So it is super important. So I will be looking at doing a meeting that is minimal on everything else, unless there's something that's absolutely pressing, and let's knock out at least these over 20-year-old policies. We'll get to the 18-year-old policies and be happy with those. So,
I believe that you guys as a school committee have a policy that says all of the policies will be reviewed by every 3 years. So.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that updating the policies is super important too, but I guess I'm wondering why, given how crazy things are with COVID, why does it need to happen this year / why didn't it happen last year or the year before?
I mean, that's a good question, and it should have happened last year, and the year before, and the year before that, for that.
Okay.
You know, it's just the thing that it's not fun going through policies.
And if I could just
it-
jump in for a second, in terms of finance, you know, the policies that I'm looking at, the rules have changed in terms of what I do. Like in terms of procurement, our policies were very much outdated, and they were restricting in terms of how I could do my job. Because though Mass General Law says X, you know, I was adhering to school committee policy. I have to. You know, one of them was about procurement. The threshold was like $2,000. Well, Mass General Law says, you know, the basic number now is $10,000, which gives us more flexibility. So, and I, you know, you're right, Carolyn, with everything going on. It's like, why now? You're right, but if it's not now, then it'll get just pushed. It just get kicked down the road again. The can just gets kicked down the road again, and instead of being 25 years past due, they're now 27 years past due, and then whoever sits in this chair, you know, is trying to do his or her job, and they're dealing with policy that's outdated. So. I don't know. Was it George Allen who said, "There's never a time, but the future is now"? I think George Allen. Is that right? Hey, I was right. Wow. So,
I mean, from my viewpoint, I mean, everything we're dealing with in the schools right now is absolutely more important. And you know, if there's stuff that comes up that we need to address, that's what we'll do. But I would like to squeeze in an extra one, and you know, it is more work for us as a subcommittee. We'll have to, you know, pull an extra night away from our families to do it, but it's what we need to do. And it's what should have been happening all along, every other year. So I do agree. Like, why is it coming up now? And it's like, well, because it should have been coming up. Linda.
So I think on a positive way of looking at it too is that in future years, when we look at the policies and revising them, we can say, look, guys, we actually took care of this during COVID as well. So what's our excuse now? So I think it's a good little kick in the right direction, a little extra mustard on it. So, I mean, I know there's a big part of me that's like, oh, why now? But I think it'll pay off in the future. So
yeah,
that's my difference.
And also, if there's any policies that people strongly feel that we should take up first, like if you just take a quick look, they're all on the RSD website under school committee. If there's anything you see that falls within our realm and you're like, this is out of date, even if we did it 3 years ago, you know, in light of COVID, we really need to fix this. Let me know. We'll absolutely take that up first. And I don't care which one it is really, but the 20 plus are a little, a lot embarrassing. But that's it. Anybody have anything else before I mute Dan? No. All right. Anybody else but Dan have anything? All right. So Dan, thanks for being a good sport. I do appreciate your soapbox. Actually, you had some really good points.
I do just have one other point. In all seriousness, under new business, I'm sorry, jumping ahead, and I'm going to be real quick. It's getting real late. We're all tired. Yeah, we're all on overdrive. Is it appropriate, Adam, for a subcommittee to bring forward a recommendation for a budget item in the new budget? Specifically, you know, does it have to go B and F through B and F, or for the full committee, but Bob and I have spoken, dare I say, very passionately about a facility director, or whatever the proper term would be. I think you clearly heard it from me, and you heard it from Bob, and we gave you all the reasons and then some, and we've got it recorded here as well, so it's all good. But there is a definitive need. Does when the full committee debates the budget in February or whenever it is that we do it, I'm sorry, just again, the hour's getting late. Does facilities step up to the plate and say, and we support this one position, or we support this one position in reallocating dollars here or there. Again, aside from the utilities, we level funded, as we did everything else, in the budget. We did. So I need to make the new members aware of that it just wasn't operations, but let's face it, operations is on the forefront now, and it has been and it will be for the indefinite future. So is it appropriate that a subcommittee would bring something forward, or do they recommend to administration, although you don't need to recommend to us, that you guys need to bring forward that request?
I think we can absolutely do it individually during the meeting. I don't think it's inappropriate for, if we feel that on our next meeting, we should, as a group, support something like that and just say, it was something I would want to vote on, but as a group, we believe that this position should be added to the budget. I think we could do that. I might have a few more conversations before I bring it to a vote for something like that, and just make sure it's appropriate. But also during our next school or subcommittee report, it's absolutely a conversation that I want to bring up during the subcommittee report, because just going around the table, we're all like, yeah, that is a position that would have been super helpful this year. Like there's no reason that wouldn't have been good. And it'll be helpful every year moving forward from now. Looking around, everybody's giving me the north and south. So I'll definitely bring it up during the subcommittee report. And even during budget discussions, I can bring it up and say, that position is something that we have discussed in the subcommittee, and then if we feel strongly enough, maybe it's something we can even put the support of a vote behind. But I'll get a little bit more input before I do that. But I think that's definitely possible.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, new business. Anything else, anybody? No. I don't have the thing in front of me. There's nothing else before a motion to adjourn, is there? If not,
If we want to set a new meeting date, a next meeting date, that's all.
I don't think we're going to meet before Christmas break. I really don't want to. I don't know if anybody else does. So I'll have Rebecca send out to poll for dates after the new year. That being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. I will do roll call vote. Linda,
Yes.
Krista,
No. Yes.
that's like a full school committee type of vote. Don't do that to me.
Yeah.
You're killing me, Smalls. That's a great line from a great movie.
Yep.
Yes.
Sandlot.
Thank you.
Not in this house.
Thank you all very much. I know it's late. We had a lot to go through, so thank you.
Well done, everybody. Stay safe through the storm.
Happy holidays.
Yes.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Ho, ho, ho.
Oh my goodness. Happy holidays. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya. Good night. Bye.